Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Tomb Raider. Martial Arts Master, sign into the Nine Yang Manual. Chapter 81. Seeing Wang Pengzi, who looked anxious, Jiyu Chengge ignored him and said to everyone, "There is only one main destination for this trip, the ancient city of Jingju." The ancient city of Jingju. My lord, this seems to be an ancient country in the western regions more than 2,000 years ago, right? Yes, my lord, I have heard of the ancient city of Jingju. It is said that the ancient country of Jingju has been buried in the yellow sand for a long time, and no one has found it for more than 2,000 years. My lord, do you know where the ancient city of Jingju is? When Jiyu Chengge heard that he was going to the ancient city of Jingju this time, Jiyu Yi and others could not help but ask. Although I don't know where the exact location is, I still know some general directions. Jiyu Chengge smiled faintly. He really didn't know where the ancient city of Jingju was, but he was very clear about one thing, starting from Lake Bostang to the southwest. Then he went west along the Peacock Ancient River until he found the ancient river heading south. Following this road, with Hu Bai's current mastery of the 16-character Yin-Yang Feng Shui secret technique, it is completely possible to find the Jingju ancient city. Master, I have something to tell you. At this time, Hu Bai, who had been silent all the time, suddenly spoke. Oh, what is it? Tell me. Didn't Fatty and I meet Da Jinya from Panjiayuan during this period? He invited me to be the leader of the archaeological team today, saying that the archaeological team is also looking for the Jingju ancient city. Hu Bai looked solemn and said in a deep voice, "We are going to the Jingju ancient city this time. I am afraid we will meet them 9 out of 10 times. Archaeological team." Hearing Hu Bai's words, everyone was stunned. If we run into the archaeological team in the Jingju ancient city, it will be really difficult to deal with. After all, they were tomb raiders, and if they were caught by the archaeological team, how could they be safe? Master, it doesn't matter if we really meet the archaeological team in the Jingju ancient city. There is only yellow sand there, and no one will know if a few people die. Jiyu San said coldly with murderous intent on his face. In his opinion, anyone who dares to stop his master must die. It's not that serious. Jiyu Chengge waved his hand and smiled gently. It's not easy for the archaeological team to find the ancient city of Jingju in the vast desert without a definite route map. Moreover, they don't have anyone who is proficient in Tianxing Feng Shui, and it's even more difficult to move in the desert. I'm afraid that when we come out of the ancient city of Jingju, they may not find it. At this point, Jiyu Chengge paused, and then continued, "Although the final destination this time is the ancient city of Jingju, we still have to pass through several places before we go. Those places are densely covered with Yinsha Qi. At that time, you four will take this opportunity to swallow more evil spirits for cultivation. If you can break through the Shantian realm, it would be the best. If not, it can also improve your own cultivation a lot. Yes, Lord. Don't worry, we will definitely not let you down." Hearing Jiyu Chengge's words, Jiyu Yi and the other four immediately stood up and said respectfully. Haba Yi and Wang Pengzi on the side saw this and almost cried with envy. They also wanted to practice the great devouring evil secret art, which would not only allow them to rob graves, but also allow them to quickly improve their cultivation. Fatty Wang felt that this secret art was tailor-made for them. Unfortunately, the minimum cultivation threshold for this secret art is the 5th level of the acquired realm, and they are only at the 3rd level now. You two should also practice well. After breaking through the 5th level of the acquired realm, I will pass this secret art to you. Looking at Hu Bai and Fatty Wang with envy, Jiyu Chengge comforted them a little. Master, don't worry, Lao Hu and I will definitely not embarrass you. Fatty Wang patted his chest vigorously and promised firmly. Let's go back and have a sleep, and then set off early tomorrow morning. Yes, Wang. After the group left, Jiyu Chengge did not stay in the pavilion, but returned directly to the room, sat cross-legged on the bed, took a dragon tiger bone blood pill, and began to continue practicing. The next day, early in the morning, after everyone washed up early, they gathered at Gu's house. After instructing Yingzi, the group of 7 went directly to the airport, preparing to take a plane to Shihai first, and then drive directly to the foot of Kunlun Mountain. As for now that the 7 of them left together, Yingzi was left alone at home. Would something serious happen? Ji Chang'e was really not worried at all. Although Yingzi's main energy is now focused on studying, she still practices every day. Now that is also the first level of acquired cultivation. With her backing, dozens of ordinary strongmen are not her opponents. And once something happens, Yingzi will hide directly in the secret room, and when Ji Chang'e and others come back, it will be an unprecedented bloodbath. Over the past month, a large secret room has been built in the courtyard. The secret room is built underground. The mechanism to open the secret room is extremely demanding. It is built with true qi as the core. Unless someone forces it to be opened with brute force, it is impossible to enter the secret room. And if you want to open the secret room with brute force, you must have a strength of more than 1,000 pounds. But how many people in this world can have a strength of more than 1,000 pounds, even if those strange people are counted? So there is no need to worry about Yingzi's safety. At the same time, in a restaurant, at a round table, there are 4 people, 3 men and 1 woman. One of them has a wretched face, a thin body, a folding fan in his hand, and a gold tooth in his mouth. This person is none other than Panjayuan Big Gold Tooth. As for the other 3 people, 2 of them are Professor Chen and Hao Eguo from the archaeological team, and Shirley Yang, the daughter of a Wall Street tycoon. At the same time, she is also the sponsor of the archaeological team looking for Jingjugu. Xiao Jin, is it true that there is no one who is proficient in Tianxing Feng Shui except Hubai you mentioned? Professor Chen, who is over 60 years old and still wears glasses, sighed and looked at Dajinya with a look of reluctance and regret. Hao Eguo, who was beside him, was already in his 40s and was also Professor Chen's disciple. Uncle Chen, it's not that I don't want to help you find someone. It's really that people who are proficient in Tianxing Feng Shui are extremely rare. Apart from Hubai, I haven't met anyone who is really good. After all, there are many scammers in this world. Dajinya opened the fan and shook his head helplessly. Teacher, if it doesn't work, let's wait a little longer. We have waited for so long, and there is no need to rush. Looking at his teacher sighing, Hao Eguo, who was beside him, couldn't bear it and comforted him. We can't wait any longer. The higher-ups finally approved the plan to excavate the ancient city of Jingju. It just so happens that Shirley is willing to sponsor the archaeological team. If we continue to wait, I'm afraid this excavation will be cancelled. Professor Chen looked distressed. His already sparse hair seemed to be becoming even thinner at this moment. Uncle Chen, if it really doesn't work, we don't have to have someone who is proficient in Tianxing Feng Shui. My father has been to Kunlun Glacier. He has a notebook in his hand. It was the notebook of Walter, the explorer who had arrived at the ancient city of Jingju. It should have a rough route map. If we can get this notebook, maybe it will be much easier to find the ancient city of Jingju. Shirley Yang, who had a high ponytail, had a bit of exotic mixed blood style, a very capable temperament, and a beautiful face, thought for a while, and stared at Professor Chen seriously and said, "Notebook, Shirley, is what you said true?" Hearing Shirley Yang's words, Professor Chen was immediately delighted. He pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and thought, in this case, let's go to Kunlun Glacier. Without someone who is proficient in Tianxing Feng Shui, we can only pin our hopes on your father's notebook. This should be done as soon as possible. I think we should go back and pack our luggage now and set off in the afternoon, how about it? Okay, I'll go back and write a report. Looking at Professor Chen and others who left in a hurry, Dajinya on the side was dumbfounded. No, Uncle Chen, you don't want to eat. The meal hasn't been paid yet. Humph, ordering such a large table of dishes, isn't this a waste? If you don't eat, I will. Dajinya muttered softly, picked up the chopsticks, and started chopping. Not to mention that Shirley Yang and others were hurriedly preparing to go to Kunlun Glacier. At this time, Ji Chang'e and others had already arrived at Shihai and got off the plane. Of course, no one knew that Shirley Yang and the others would come to Kunlun Glacier today. But even if they knew, they probably wouldn't take it seriously. With all the luggage the archaeological team had, it was definitely unrealistic to take a plane, so they had to take a train. It would probably be a few days before they arrived at Kunlun Glacier. By then, I'm afraid Ji Chang'e and the others would have left here long ago, and would have been on their way to the ancient city of Jingju in the desert. Boss, there are a lot of us, so I deliberately got a Ford off-road vehicle. Outside the airport, Ji Chang'e and the others stood on the side of the road for less than 2 minutes before they saw Ji Yi driving a black off-road vehicle slowly approaching them with a smile. Wow, this car is good. It's snowy and icy here in Kunlun now, and the mountain roads are not easy to drive. This off-road vehicle can save a lot of trouble. Fatty Wong patted the hood and gave a thumbs up. After getting on the car, the group did not go straight to Kunlun, but first found a place to have a good meal. Now it is lunchtime. Although everyone has already embarked on the path of cultivation, it is okay not to eat for a few days, especially Ji Chang'e, who is in the Shantian realm. Even if he does not eat or drink for a month or two, nothing will happen. But as a human being, if you eliminate the desire for food and drink because of cultivation, wouldn't it be too boring? Therefore, even if everyone has cultivation, they are still used to eating at mealtime, unless they really have to. After choosing a good restaurant, the group of 7 people directly ordered a large table of dishes. The 7 people have a large appetite and directly swept away a large table of food. After eating and drinking, everyone rested for a while, and then set off again, heading straight to the Kunlun Mountains. Kunlun Mountain. On the endless snowy mountains, a group of 7 people walked forward in the wind and snow. On the snowy mountains, the temperature was -10 or 20 degrees, but everyone seemed not to feel the cold. They only wore jackets inside, mountaineering clothes outside, combat boots on their feet, and took one step at a time. Oh no, except for Wang Pengzi and Hubai. Ji Yi and the other 4 now all have the 9th level of acquired cultivation. Although the climate is cold on the Kunlun snowy plain, their true energy is strong and can completely resist some of the cold. But Hubai and Wang Pengzi only have the 3rd level of acquired cultivation, and they can't completely resist the cold. So the 2 of them are wrapped in a very warm mink fur coat and a woolen hat on their heads. As for Ji Chang'e, he is an innate 6th level cultivator, and he only wears a jacket, which looks very refreshing. But in this icy and snowy place, it is abnormal to wear it like this. It means that his cultivation is strong, otherwise he would have frozen to death on this snowy plain. Master, where is the place you are talking about? We have been walking for more than 2 hours. Why don't we split up and send out flares when we find it? Looking at the vast expanse of snow and snow-capped mountains in front, behind, and around, Ji Yi turned back and looked at Ji Chang'e and said. Ji Chang'e pondered for a moment, then nodded and agreed. Okay, the 6 of you will search quickly in 6 directions, remember not to be too far apart. As he said, he focused on Hubba and Fatty Wong and warned them, especially the 2 of you, after all, you are only the 3rd level of the acquired realm. There are still many dangers in the long-term heavy health. Master, don't worry, we know. Hubba nodded. Okay, let's go. Remember, the place I am looking for is a big crack, which should be buried by ice and snow all year round, but sometimes the ice and snow will collapse and fall into the cracked canyon. Be careful when you search. After hearing Ji Chang'e's words, everyone nodded, then turned around and took a step, and instantly jumped out. Ji Yi and his 4 companions had the highest cultivation level. In just a short while, their figures disappeared from the boundless snowfield. However, Wang Pengzi and Hubba were much slower. After all, they were only at the 3rd level of the acquired cultivation level. After watching the 6 people leave, Ji Chang'e turned around and looked around. Then he did not stay where he was, but also found a direction and prepared to search. He stepped lightly on the snow, and there was no trace left on the snow. The whole person seemed to shrink the earth into an inch, and in an instant, he crossed a distance of hundreds of meters, and then in the next instant, he was separated by hundreds of meters. In an instant, he covered hundreds of meters, and his demeanor and temperament were like a banished immortal, passing through this snowy plateau. Wherever he passed, he did not even leave the slightest trace. The fact that he left no trace on the snow was not enough to prove his strength. This is the depth of the immortal step. Ji Chang'e's cultivation is not enough at the moment, otherwise it would be nothing to travel thousands of meters in an instant, surpass the speed of sound several times, and even fly in the air and walk in the air. However, an hour passed quickly. But no matter how Ji Chang'e searched, he did not find any trace of the Great Canyon crack. Even the evil spirit that had gathered in the area of the 9-story demon tower for thousands of years, he did not feel a trace. Not only him, but Ji Yi and others obviously did not find the destination, otherwise the signal flare would have been transmitted by now. Bang bang. However, at this moment, two fiery red signal flares in the distant sky shot up directly into the sky, which was extremely conspicuous on this vast snowfield. As this Hubba Yi and Fatty Wong CF'd it, they bumped into each other and found the Great Canyon crack. Looking at the two signal flares a little distance apart in the distant sky, Ji Yu Chengge fell into deep thought. Logically speaking, with his current cultivation, he should be the first to find the place. But in the end, Hu Bai and Fatty Wong found the place together. Is this their luck as the sons of destiny in this world? Tisk, heaven's will, or has it already been destined? Ji Yu Chengge smacked his lips, shook his head helplessly, and then his figure flashed and disappeared instantly. On the other side, Ji Yu Yi and the other four also found the two flares at the same time. The four of them rushed directly to the direction of the flares without any hesitation. At the same time, on the other side of the snowfield, Hu Bai and Fatty Wong only felt that their luck was so bad. Boom! A huge white and blue object swept directly from a distance, and its power was so great that the wind and snow were blown up, and snowflakes splashed. Clang! Hu Bai's tang sword blocked in front of him like lightning, but the power of that blow was so great that it actually made him slide back more than 20 meters in the snow, and his whole body's true energy was moving, and his internal organs were affected to some extent. Old Hu, you long worm, I'll kill you. Seeing Hubba in danger, Fatty Wong was furious. He leapt up, holding the tang sword tightly in both hands, and slashed forward in panic. Roar! However, at this time, a low roar of an animal came, and a huge python more than 20 meters long was seen on the snowy plain, raising its head high and slamming towards Fatty Wong fiercely. The blade collided with the python's head, and the blade wrapped in true chi was unable to break the opponent's defense for a while, only breaking a few scales and splashing a spark. Puff! Suddenly, the python's tail was like a magic whip, breaking through the air in an instant, and whipped Fatty Wong away fiercely. Puff! Fatty Wong spit out a large mouthful of blood in the air, fell heavily on the snow, and rolled several times before stopping. Seeing that Fatty Wong was injured, Hubba rushed over to help him up, and asked with a worried look. Pooh! Fatty Wong stood up, spit out a mouthful of blood foam fiercely, and stared at the huge python fiercely. Old Hu, there are pythons on this G snowfield, isn't this ridiculous? Shouldn't it hibernate in such a cold weather? This long worm is probably a mutant, a snowfield python over 20 meters long, with white and blue scales all over its body, which is simply unheard of. But it dared to attack Fatty. Fat will definitely not let it go today. Looking at the giant python over 20 meters long and as thick as a bucket not far away, Fatty Wong was full of murderous intent. A discerning person can tell at a glance that this giant python is a mutant. After all, who would have snakes on the snowfield? Even if there are, they are in hot springs. How could it appear in the ice and snow outside and be so lively? The most important thing is that this snowfield python is so huge, and the giant python looks extremely beautiful, with white and blue scales all over its body, which is simply unheard of and unseen. Its huge head is triangular, with blue snake eyes and a slightly imperceptible bulge on its forehead. At this moment, it was spitting out its snake tongue, and its eyes were fixed on Hubba Yi and Wang Pengzi. Buzz! At this moment, a shadow flashed by, and then a figure appeared in front of Hubba Yi and Wang Pengzi. Master! Master! When they saw that the person coming was Ji Yu Chengge, their eyes suddenly lit up. This mutant snow python was terrifying. Even with the 3-level cultivation of the two of them, they were not its opponent. It can be seen how terrifying it was. But even so, what? Now that the master has come, let alone a snow python, even if it is a bai, it will be crushed like an ant. How did you two encounter this thing? Ji Yu Chengge looked at the snow python, and then looked back at Hubba Yi and Wang Pengzi. His expression became a little strange. With his eyesight, he could naturally see at a glance that this snow python was a mutant species, and its scales were as hard as iron. Its strength was definitely not something Hubba Yi and Wang Pengzi could contend with. But this giant snow python that shouldn't exist appeared in Kunlun Glacier. Was it because of the butterfly effect caused by his appearance, or was it because Hu Bai and Wang Pengzi's strength increased, and a more dangerous existence was deliberately born in the world line? My lord, just now, Lao Hu and I searched for the canyon crack in different directions, but we didn't expect that we both found the front and back positions of the canyon crack at the same time. I just sent a signal, but I didn't expect that such a dead long worm would drill out of the canyon crack." Hearing Wang Pengzi's explanation, Ji Chengge nodded, then turned to look at the giant snow python. This giant snow python is quite powerful, and it is a mutant species. It even seems to have a lot of intelligence. It can no longer be called an animal beast. It's probably okay to call it a monster. Roar. At this moment, the giant snow python roared at Ji Chengge, raised its huge head, opened its bloody mouth, and rushed towards Ji Chengge. Such a mutant snowfield python, which is as powerful as a demon beast, I wonder if it has an inner elixir. Ji Chengge pondered in his heart. He remembered that the six-winged centipede that Quechao Xiao encountered in Pingshan had an inner elixir. This snowfield python is more terrifying than the six-winged centipede. It should also have an inner elixir. This kind of demon beast that absorbs the essence of the sun and moon of heaven and earth, and as a mutant, is full of treasures. If it is killed, it will definitely bring unexpected benefits to him and Ji Yuyi and others under his command. Thinking of this, Ji Chengge's eyes suddenly flashed with cold light. Facing the rushing snowfield python, Ji Chengge suddenly raised his right hand, clenched his 5 fingers into a fist. His big vertebra was like a dragon, his spine was tightened like a bowstring, and the blood and qi in his body were surging wildly, and then he threw a punch. He did not use any true energy in this punch, but only relied on the strength of his physical body to punch out. The strength of the flesh is 30,000 jin, like Lulu's string memory. A punch was thrown, hitting the head of the snowfield giant python heavily. The terrible power burst out, and the unparalleled aura swept all around. Under this punch, the skull of the snowfield giant python was directly cracked, and countless scales splashed out. The huge body was directly blown away more than 10 meters away, and fell heavily on the snow, raising the minister Shuilu. "Oh my god, tisk tisk, the master's strength is really beyond our reach. The snow python that we couldn't stop even with our combined strength couldn't even withstand a punch from the master." Looking at the snow python that was blown away by Ji Chengge's punch, Fatty Wang smacked his lips, with a look of amazement, and felt his teeth hurt. The master's strength has long been extraordinary, how can we compare with him? Huba rolled his eyes in annoyance, and then cast his gaze to the snow python that fell in the snow not far away. The head of the snow python was cracked, and a large amount of blood spurted out, dyeing a large area of snow red. The giant python was not dead, but it was severely injured. Its huge body kept rolling and struggling in the snow. A species that should not exist. Now that it has appeared, it must be prepared to die. Ji Chengge's face was calm as he walked towards the snow python step by step. As if sensing the great sense of danger coming from Ji Chengge, the snow python kept spitting out its tongue, and its pair of azure snake eyes actually revealed a touch of human-like resentment and unwillingness. Looking at the head in front of him that was taller than a human, Ji Chengge stroked the snow python's body with his right hand and slowly stroked its scales. Such hard scales are simply treasures for casting weapons. If these scales are integrated into Ji Yuyi's Tang swords, in terms of sharpness, I'm afraid they will be as sharp as the black gold ancient sword, or even better. Ji Chengge whispered to himself, then turned his right hand, and a Tang sword appeared in his palm. The blade was black, and there were golden patterns on it, extending all the way to the handle. Buzz! His figure flashed, and he instantly appeared on the head of the snow python. The blade shook, and the power of true essence poured in, and suddenly a faint golden light flashed. Die! With a low and cold shout, the Tang sword in Ji Chengge's hand, under the effect of the power of true essence, directly broke through the scales and cut off the head of the snow python. Crash! In an instant, a large amount of snake blood gushed out, dyeing the white snow into a blood red. These snake bloods can also be regarded as treasures. Although they have no effect on me, if you add some 100-year-old medicinal materials to it, it will definitely make people's cultivation further, and even make the physical body stronger. Quote. Ji Chengge waved and threw a few buckets to Hubba and the other two, waving his hand and saying, "What are you two still standing there for? This giant python is full of treasures, and the snake blood can also help your cultivation. Hurry up and fill it with blood." "What? This thing can also improve our cultivation?" Hearing Ji Chengge's words, Fatty Wong was shocked, and then hurriedly took the bucket and went to the incision of the broken head to fill it with snake blood. Hu Bai on the side was not slow at all, but when the two saw the large amount of snake blood on the ground, dyeing the snow red, they couldn't help but show a trace of heartache on their faces. This is all precious blood that can improve their cultivation. It's a big loss to waste so much. Puff. On the other side, Ji Yu Chengge used the tang knife to cut the 7 inches of the giant python in the snow field. After opening a hole, his right hand kept searching in his body. After a while, his eyes suddenly lit up. He took his hand out of the flesh and blood, and there was a green object the size of a head in his palm. Is this snake gall? Looking at the snake gall in his hand, Ji Yu Chengge raised his eyebrows. Ordinary snake gall must emit a fishy smell. But the snake gall in front of him was not only the size of a head, but also had no fishy smell, but a faint fragrance. This thing is a treasure, put it away first. Quote. Thinking of this, Ji Yu Chengge's heart moved, and he received it into the system space. Soon, he took out a fist-sized, round bead emitting a little light from the body of the giant python. With his cultivation, he could naturally feel that the bead contained an extremely rich energy. This thick mist of energy is no less than the true energy of a strong man in the innate realm. This should be the inner elixir of the snowfield giant python, right? This is a good thing, and it is of great use to me. Quote. The most valuable things on the entire snow python are the snake gallbladder and the inner elixir. After storing these two things in the system space, he quickly dismembered the entire snow python with a tang sword. The snake blood was collected in a bucket, and the snake meat was also stored. It contained a lot of blood and flesh essence, which was also beneficial to the cultivation of Ji Yu Yi and others. A large number of scales were stacked together. There were a lot of these scales, and on average each scale was smaller than a palm. In the end, only the python bones and tendons, as well as the head of the snow python were left. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, at this moment, several figures came from a distance at high speed. As 4 sounds of breaking through the air came, Ji Yu Yi and the other 4 quickly came in front of them. Looking at the snow-dyed blood red, as well as several buckets of blood, a large amount of flesh and blood, and the huge python head, the faces of more than a dozen Ji Yu couldn't help but change. Hee, you guys are late. Quote. Seeing Ji Yu Yi and his men coming, Fatty Wong chuckled and said, see. There is such a big python on the snowfield. This giant python on the snowfield is a mutant species, and it has just been killed by the master. The master said that these flesh and blood will be of great help to our cultivation. He is also preparing to integrate the scales and bones into our weapons. By then, our tang swords will become even more powerful. Hearing Fatty Wang's words, Ji Yu Yi and his men looked at Hubba Yi doubtfully. They didn't believe what Fatty Wang said. After seeing Hubba Yi nod, they couldn't help but be surprised. Master, since you said that this giant python on the snowfield is full of treasures and eating its flesh and blood can improve cultivation, why don't we look for it again to see if there are any more? After a moment of contemplation, Ji Yu suddenly suggested. Yes, my lord, this giant snow python came out of the big crack in the canyon, and there must be more below. Wang Pengzi's eyes lit up when he heard this. This thing is not a cabbage, a species that should not appear in the first place. You should be happy if you can find one. Ji Yu Chengge shook his head. He didn't think that there would be such a giant snow python under the big crack. Otherwise, the bloody smell alone would have brought it out. Okay, now that the big crack in the canyon has been found, we should go down and take a look. Ji Yu Chengge waved his hand, put all the things on the giant snow python into the system space, said something to everyone, and then turned and walked towards the big crack in the canyon not far behind him. Soon, a group of people came to the big crack in the canyon. This big crack is about 1,000 meters long, with narrower sides and a very wide area in the middle. Looking down, because it is covered with a lot of cold mist, you can't see the edge at all. My lord, I suddenly remembered something. Looking at the big crack in front of him, Hubai suddenly stepped forward with a heavy face and whispered. I came here when I was a soldier. It was a nightmare that I will never forget in my life. Looking at Hubai, whose expression was getting more and more gloomy and solemn, Ji Yu Chengge glanced at him and said, you mean the kind of insect that emits blue light and turns into ashes when touched? My lord, do you know? Hubai looked up suddenly and said in shock. That insect is called fire ladybug, also known as Depu ghost insect. It has two forms, called infinite karma fire and buying poor god ice. Infinite karma fire form is a blue flame ladybug. As long as it is touched, it will be burned into ashes in an instant. Buying poor god ice form is silvery white, like a tiny sparkling ice crystal. Once it touches, it will immediately freeze into frost and then break into broken shoulders. Although these two forms sound a bit scary, they have their own weaknesses. The former is afraid of water, and the latter is afraid of fire. And under this large crack in the canyon, there are countless numbers of Depu ghost insects. For ordinary people, if they want to deal with this kind of Depu ghost insects, they can only attack them with their weaknesses, but we are martial arts practitioners. Any enemy should be crushed with absolute killing power. Hubai, are you afraid? Ji Yu Chang'e had a blank expression on his face, staring at Hubai quietly. Hubai looked a little ferocious, and obviously he thought of the painful and helpless scene in the past. But soon, he relaxed his brows and said firmly, if it was before, I would definitely never come to this ghost place again, but now I follow the master into the martial arts practice. 0. Martial artists are not afraid of any challenges. Let him be a ghost, all of them will be killed. Hubai, your talent is not weak, and you will firmly hold this belief. This will be of great help to you in the future on the road of martial arts. Single quote. Ji Yu Chang'e smiled faintly and said with relief, okay, we have said what we should say, and we should go down. Swish. Ji Yu Chang'e waved his hand, and several nylon ropes instantly fell into the hands of several people. I will go down first, you guys hurry up. After leaving a word, Ji Yu Chang'e took a step forward, and rushed down instantly with the immortal step. The distance of this canyon crack is probably hundreds of meters, leading directly to the deep underground of the snowfield. If he jumped down directly, even with Ji Yu Chang'e's current cultivation, he would be seriously injured. However, with Ji Yu Chang'e's strength, he took advantage of the air several times during the fall, and he naturally floated like a fairy and slowly fell to the ground. And Ji Yu Yi and others above tied the nylon rope to a solid place and quickly went down along the nylon rope. Because Ji Yu Chang'e had known about this canyon crack for a long time, when he bought the nylon rope, it was specially customized. Therefore, there was no such embarrassing situation that the rope was not long enough and Ji Yu Yi and others were stuck in the middle of the road. Ji Yu Yi and his companions used the nylon rope to descend rapidly, and soon they landed steadily on the ground one by one. Master, there is a gathering of evil spirits in the depths ahead. Suddenly, Hubba looked at the depths of the passage ahead and frowned. Evil spirits are good. For us, isn't it the nourishment for improving our cultivation? Ji Yu San couldn't help but grin when he heard this. Let's go. This big crack in the canyon is obviously heading all the way. There may be some surprises waiting for us there. Ji Yu Chang'e smiled faintly and led everyone to move forward in the direction that was sloping downward in front of them. However, not long after, everyone found a body by the wall. The body was frozen and had been dead for who knows how long. Ji Yu Chang'e didn't care about this and led everyone forward. The body was a member of Shirley Yang's father's former team. There was a pistol on him, but he still didn't care. As for guns, his system space also had a large amount of ammunition obtained from military fortresses. Even infantry guns and grenade launchers had only 10 pistols, which was nothing. Kunlun Glacier. A group of 7 people walked quickly under the big crack in the canyon. Master, we have been walking for almost an hour, why hasn't this passage reached the end yet? Fatty Wong was breathing a little fast. He was only at the 3rd level of the acquired cultivation. He had been hit by the giant snow python before, and his injuries had not healed yet. Now he has been running fast for another hour, and his physical strength is beginning to be a little bit unable to keep up. It's almost the end. Ji Yu Chang'e narrowed his eyes slightly. According to his estimation, the underground river should be ahead. Sure enough, after about 10 minutes, the group really found the underground river. Wow, there is actually an underground river here, and the water is still warm. Fatty Wong squatted down, touched the river water with his hand, and said in surprise. Not only that, the water of this underground river is extremely clear. I didn't find any impurities, and there are fish swimming in the water that I have never seen before. Quote. Hubai came forward, observed carefully, and said affirmatively. Be careful, this underground river has existed for who knows how many years, and the water temperature is moderate. There must be some unknown creatures hidden in it, even if it is a prehistoric creature, I believe it. Ji Yu Chang'e glanced at Hubai and Fatty Wong, and said calmly. What he said was not alarmist. In the original time and space, there was a huge prehistoric overlord salamander in this underground river. Now with the improvement of Hubai and Fatty Wang's strength, perhaps the danger here will become more serious. Let's go. Just jump over the underground river, the destination should be ahead. Quote. We are about to arrive at the check-in point, and Ji Yu Chang'e doesn't want to waste any more time here. He moved forward, stepped forward, and instantly crossed the underground river that was dozens of meters wide. Seeing this, Ji Yu Yi and the other four also rushed their true energy into their legs, and crossed the underground river at a very fast speed and came to the other side of the river. As for Wang Pengzi and Hubai's current strength, it is a bit wishful thinking to want to cross a distance of dozens of meters so easily. But after all, the two are masters of the third level of the acquired realm, and they stepped back slightly. After a few steps, he leaned against the wall for a run-up, and then the true energy was poured into his legs, and he jumped directly for 10 meters. Then the two of them took advantage of the wall in midair and jumped another 10 meters, landing beside Ji Yu Yi and his group. After crossing the underground river, the group walked forward again. In a few minutes, everyone suddenly found a huge cave in front of them. The entire cave was hundreds of thousands of meters high and covered the size of several football fields. All around and even above their heads were buried in the glacier. I don't know how much the rock costs. What really surprised everyone was that there were densely packed mummies in this cave. These mummies were animals and humans. From the decayed clothes on the mummies, it can be seen that these people existed at least 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. In the center of the cave, there stood a huge wooden tower. The tower has 9 floors, and the whole body is made of wood of unknown material, which is gray-brown. When everyone saw it, a heavy, mysterious and weird breath instantly hit them. Outside the 9-story tower, there are many mummies hanging. However, compared with the more serious decay of the mummies on the ground, the mummies hanging on the tower seem to look more complete. However, no matter what kind of mummies, there are countless gourd ministers emitting faint blue light on their bodies. Looking at this scene in front of them, everyone's pupils shrank, and they looked around with a serious and vigilant look. Hubai, do you see those bugs? These are the Depu ghost bugs. Ji Yu Chang'e looked at the ladybugs calmly, and then continued, these Depu ghost insects are obviously sleeping. Once the sound is too loud, they will wake up immediately. There are so many Depu ghost insects, must there be tens of thousands? Fatty Wong opened his mouth wide, and then looked at Hubba with some worry. Old Hu, you can't be reckless. Fatty knows that you hate these insects, but these insects count in tens of thousands. If they all revive, it will definitely be a big trouble for us. Don't worry, Fatty, I know what I am doing. Hubba nodded slightly and said in a deep voice. Hee, Master, there seem to be a lot of artifacts on these mummies, how about we collect them all together? Suddenly, seeing the artifacts on the mummies and some scattered on the ground, Fatty Wong couldn't help itching. Take these artifacts, but be careful, otherwise the Depu ghost insects will be alarmed and these things will turn into ashes. Master, don't worry, I, Fatty Wong, will do things steadily. Fatty Wong patted his chest and said with assurance. Master, this 9-story tower seems to be the legendary 9-story demon tower, right? Suddenly, after observing the tower for a while, Hubai asked with some surprise. It is indeed a 9-story demon tower. This thing was built by the Demon Kingdom back then. In fact, the Demon Kingdom has a close relationship with the ancient Jingju Kingdom. The two of them are of the same clan and both believe in an ancient god called the Snake God. This 9-story demon tower means a mausoleum in the Demon Kingdom. Snake God. For what Ji Yu Chang'e just said, everyone didn't care too much, but when they heard the word, Snake God, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Master, there is really a god here. Fatty Wong said with some disbelief. Since the birth of the world, there have been ancient gods in the world, and the snake god is naturally one of them. However, These ancient gods have either fallen temporarily or their souls have fallen into a deep sleep due to various reasons, so there is no need to worry too much. I didn't expect that there are really gods in this world. If it weren't for what the master said, I would never dare to believe it. Hubba smiled bitterly and shook his head. Okay, let's not talk about the snake god for now. You wait here, I'll go to this 9-story demon building. Ji Yu Chengge said after looking at a few people. Don't worry, master, since you said that this 9-story demon building is the mausoleum of the demon country, isn't it a tomb? Let's go and take a look. When he heard that they were going to the 9-story demon tower, Fatty Wong hurriedly said anxiously. Master, let's go with you. Anyway, there's nothing heavy here. Ji Yu Yi, who was standing by, also asked. Well, let's go together. Ji Yu Chengge nodded. With his strength, he was not afraid of any accidents that would happen, so it would be good to take a few people with him. As he said that, the group walked towards the 9-story demon tower. The footsteps of the people were very light, and they didn't make any noise at all. Soon they arrived in front of the 9-story demon tower. Master, this demon kingdom seems to be a religious theocracy empire more than 3,000 years ago, and was later destroyed by King Jesser and Master Padmasambhava. It is said that the highest existence in the demon kingdom is the Ghost Mother, and the Ghost Mother also possesses a strange ability. I used to think this was a legend. But now that you say that the ancient gods exist, these legends may be somewhat true. Looking at the huge 9-story demon tower in front of him, Hubba Yi couldn't help but sigh and shook his head. Ji Yu Chengge stretched out his hand to push open the wooden door, stepped lightly on the wooden board, walked into the demon building, his expression unchanged, and said lightly. Everyone in the demon kingdom believes in the snake god. The ancestors of the demon kingdom took the eyes of the snake god from the head of the snake god and mastered a secret called transformation of the realm. The demon kingdom has no royal family. The one who controlled the demon kingdom at that time was the high priest of the group cancer technique. These high priests even selected a ghost mother. These ghost mothers are extremely extraordinary. They master the ability of transformation of the realm. From now on, the highest leader of the demon kingdom is the ghost mother. Looking at the empty first floor, everyone didn't care and went straight to the second floor. But while everyone was chatting about the secrets of the demon kingdom, they soon came to the 7th floor. Master, what kind of ability do you think this transformation of the realm is? Hu Bai suddenly asked. Ji Yu Chengge paused. It was really difficult for him to explain the inexplicable power of the snake god. After a moment of hesitation, Ji Yu Chengge said, I have not personally witnessed the transformation of the realm, but one thing is certain. It can project the illusory creation into reality. This power cannot even be distinguished, whether it is fake or real. But fake is fake after all. This power seems to be magical, but as your strength increases in the future, this power will not affect you. Swish. Be careful. Suddenly, a golden knife flew towards Ji Yu Chengge from the stairwell leading from the 7th floor to the 8th floor. This sudden scene startled everyone. Ji Yu Chengge stretched out his right hand, clamped the golden knife steadily with 2 fingers, and looked calmly at the 3 mummies wrapped in leather armor and with hideous faces on the stairs in front of him. No, it was not a mummy's, but a corpse like a sculpture. The 3 statue-like corpses now opened their eyes wide, but there were no eyeballs in their eye sockets, but red light flashed. In their hands, they held different weapons, including tridents, long swords, and sticks with spikes similar to maces. My lord, what are these 3? Fatty Wong was a little confused, and slowly pulled out the Tang sword with some caution. Throwing the golden sword made of gold into the system space, Ji Yu Chengge narrowed his eyes and said, They are just mummies, not Zongzi, but they seem to be controlled by something, which should be cancer. I think it is our arrival that awakens these sleeping tired insects again and controls them to attack us. Cancer. A group of mummies actually feel the thorns of your fat master. Quote. Upon hearing this, Fatty Wong snorted angrily, picked up his Tang sword and leapt towards the 3 mummies wrapped in leather armor. Come and die for your fat master. Fatty Wong clenched his hands tightly and lay down, wrapped the blade with his true energy, and chopped it down with the force of a mountain. This knife actually cut off one of the long swords, and split the man and the sword in half. At the same time, the weapons in the hands of the other 2 mummies also smashed towards Fatty Wong at the first time. However, Fatty Wong had the third level of acquired cultivation, and his fat body actually forced a backflip in the air, and the tang sword in his hand slashed out horizontally. Crack, crack, the two weapons broke, and the two mummies were directly cut in half. Who? You dare to scare your fat master, you are really looking for death. Quote. Fatty Wong exhaled, stomped hard on the mummy that fell on the stairs, and said angrily. As he said that, he looked back at the stairs and Ji Yu Chengge, who was standing on the 7th floor, said, Master, these few rotten fish and shrimp dare to block our way. Let's continue to the 8th floor. Fatty, they are not dead yet. Huh. Fatty Wang's eyes widened, turned his head to look at his feet, his face was extremely stiff. Crash, crash, crash. At the same time, a lot of noise came from outside. Ji Yuyi frowned, walked to the window and looked forward, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression changed drastically. I saw that the mummies that were originally on the ground actually climbed up from the ground at this moment, and they all came towards the 9-story demon building with red eyes. Master, we are in trouble. The mummies are rioting. What? The mummies are rioting. When they heard this, Hubba and the others frowned and hurried to the window to look down. At this time, countless mummies in the entire cave, whether human or animal corpses, all had red eyes, crawling from the ground and heading towards the 9-story demon tower. These mummies were like Zongzi, and they all mutated at this moment. The originally rotten and weathered bodies turned out to be extremely strong, and even their speed was rapidly increasing. There were at least thousands of mummies in the entire cave, which meant that thousands of mummies were rushing towards them at this moment. In addition, the Depu ghost insect that was originally lying on the mummies was also revived. KKK. Tens of thousands of Depu ghost insects revived, and the sound of their vibrating wings continued to echo in the entire cave. Countless blue lights flickered like stars, looking extremely gorgeous. But beneath this gorgeous scenery, there is a monstrous crisis. Thousands of mummies are rioting. It should be caused by the cancer technique. They are trying to stop us from going to the last 2 floors of the 9-story demon tower. That's why those Depu ghost bugs are revived. Hubai took a deep breath and said with serious eyes, Master, we are afraid that we are really in big trouble. Trouble? Ji Yu-san smiled coldly, with a hint of excited killing intent on his face. Since breaking through the 9th level of the acquired realm, I have never used my full strength. It's just some mummies and Depu ghost bugs. What's there to be afraid of? Ji Yu nodded, a gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and he said expressionlessly, although these mummies have mutated under the control of the cancer technique and their strength has increased a lot, it's just a matter of a knife. Depu ghost bugs seem dangerous and can easily burn people into ashes and freeze them into ice and frost, but as long as they are not allowed to touch them, they can be killed at will. Quote. There is one more thing you forgot. These mummies are under the control of cancer. Even if their bodies are cut off, they still cannot be completely killed. At this moment, GUC on the side suddenly reminded him. Hearing this, everyone was stunned at first, and then turned to look at the 3 mummies that were cut into 6 halves on the stairs. At this moment, they were pulling at Wang Pengzi's combat boots. This can't kill you. Fatty is giving you face, right? Wang Pengzi's face was ashen. These disgusting guys were pulling at his shoes, which made him sick. Die, die, die. Wang Pengzi held a tang sword in his hand and chopped at these guys. In a few breaths, the 3 mummies were chopped into countless pieces and scattered throughout the stairwell. Until then, the pieces of these mummies were motionless and completely dead. It seems that we have to really cut these mummies into pieces, otherwise they will not be so easy to kill under the control of cancer. But I kind of like this feeling. Ji Yu-san grinned, slowly pulled out the tang sword in his hand, jumped up, and went directly down from the window. Kill! Ji Yu-san shouted, holding the tang sword tightly with both hands, and the true energy in his dantian quickly poured into the blade. Suddenly, the tang sword burst out with ray after ray of bright light. Before the man fell, he slashed out 18 times in a row. 18 blade beams of light cut dozens of mummies into countless pieces in an instant. Pieces of mummies flew, and Depu ghost insects were crushed into powder under these blade beams. For a moment, Ji Yu-san, who had just jumped down the cave, actually cleared an absolutely safe vacuum zone within 10 meters around him. Seeing this scene below, Ji Yuyi and others couldn't help but smile. Master, let us deal with these mummies and Depu ghost insects, and you continue to go upstairs. Ji Yu Chengge looked calm, nodded lightly, glanced coldly at the crazy mummies and Depu ghost bugs outside, and then stepped onto the stairs to the 8th floor. Everyone, it's time for us to take action. Ji Yu Yi looked around at Ji Yu Ji Yu Si, Hubba Yi and Fatty Wong, and said with a smile. Then let's have a good fight today. I have never fought with these sinister things, but today I can have a good fight. Ji Yu smiled slightly, then also drew out the Tang sword, jumped up, and rushed down. Ji Yu Si, who was standing next to him, followed closely. When the two of them took action, their killing power was not weaker than that of Ji Yu San before. In an instant, dozens of mummies were killed, and a large number of Depu ghost bugs died in their hands. But for thousands of mummies and tens of thousands of Depu ghost bugs, this death was completely insignificant. A large number of mummies jumped over the three people, rushed into the 9-story demon tower, and went up the stairs. At the same time, the mummies that had been hanging outside the 9-story demon tower were also controlled by the cancer technique at this moment, with red eyes, and jumped into the sister building. Old Hu, Fatty, you two follow the stairs and kill as many as possible to the 1st floor and guard the gate. Ji Yu Yi said in a deep voice. Okay, you should be careful too. Hubba nodded slightly, without any nonsense, and walked down the stairs with Fatty. As soon as they arrived at the 6th floor, they found that more than 10,000 suns were rushing towards them. Come and die for me. Fatty Wong shouted angrily, holding a Tang sword and slashing fiercely. Hubba hurriedly followed when he saw this. The two of them fought from the 6th floor to the 5th floor, killing at least dozens of mummies during the process. Then they fought to the 4th floor, the 3rd floor. At the same time, Ji Yu Yi on the 7th floor took a step and jumped out of the window directly, landing on the eaves. Looking at the countless Depu ghost insects flashing blue light like stars, the Tang sword in his hand suddenly burst out with a scorching light. This light was extremely bright, and instantly attracted a large number of Depu ghost insects to come. Hey! I'm waiting for you. Facing those Depu ghost insects that fluttered their wings and flew towards him crazily, Ji Yu Yi smiled coldly, and the Goya Tang sword slashed out like a storm. Each knife was as fast as lightning. As the number of knife strikes increased, Ji Yu Yi actually used himself as the eye of the wind, and countless sword chi as wind, forming a sword chi storm. The sword energy wind spun around Ji Yu Zhou at a speed of 1 meter, and in the end it even became a sword energy tornado wind. Those Depu ghost insects that rushed towards him were crushed into pieces by the sword energy tornado wind before they could get close to him. At the same time, the 9-story demon tower, the 8th floor. Ji Yu Chengge looked at the entire 8th floor space with some surprise. There were actually strange snake heads made of gold in the 4 directions of east, west, south and north. This golden monster snake head was about 1 meter high, with a bloody mouth. It was obviously just a dead thing made of gold, but from then on, Ji Yu Chengge felt that the other party was alive and was staring at him with a covetous look. It's interesting. This should be the trick of the demon country's high priest, right? Ji Yu Chengge smiled faintly, then turned around and walked towards the 9th floor. However, just when he stepped on the first step, he saw that the 4 golden monster snake heads seemed to be alive and began to twist. Then, 4 black snakes as wide as thighs and nearly 10 meters long emerged from the head of the golden snake and attacked Ji Yu Chengge. Die! As a cold voice fell, countless sword chi burst out from his body and instantly swept towards the 4 snakes. Puff! 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 The terrible sword chi splashed and burst out with terrifying killing power. The 4 snakes didn't even have a chance to react and were strangled into a blood mist. From appearance to death, the 4 snakes didn't even take a few breaths. With the death of the 4 snakes, the 4 snakes made of gold completely turned into dead things. Swish! Ji Yu Chengge waved his hand and directly received the golden snake into the system space. Plop! Without any obstacles, Ji Yu Chengge stepped straight to the 9th floor. Is this the top of the 9-story demon building? After arriving at the 9th floor of the demon building, Ji Yu Chengge stood at the stairs and looked at the space on the entire 9th floor. Unlike other floors, the space in the 9th floor of the demon building is only half of the 8th floor. And there is nothing on the walls around. There is only a coffin that is completely sealed by molten iron in the center. Whistle coffin. Looking at the completely sealed coffin, Ji Chang'e couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. But soon he shook his head again. The so-called whistle coffin is sealed with cast iron. There is a hole on the coffin, which looks like a huge iron whistle. And the coffin in front of him was obviously directly cast with molten iron, which completely sealed it without even a hole. If you want to open this coffin, there is no other way except to use brute force. I want to see who is buried in this coffin. The high priest of the demonic kingdom, or the ghost mother. Ji Chang'e narrowed his eyes and slowly stepped to the front of the coffin. Ding! A sign in location has been found. Host, do you want to start signing in? Ji Chang'e, who was about to tear open the coffin with brute force, was stunned when he heard the sudden voice from the system in his mind. My system won't have any delay, right? Why is there always a delay when signing in? Ji Chang'e was a little surprised, and then secretly replied, sign in. Ding! Signing in. Sign in successfully. Ding! Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully at the 9-story Demon Tower in Kunlun Glacier and receiving the sign in reward Martial Arts Medicinal Bath and Medicinal Diet Art. Martial Arts Medicinal Bath and Medicinal Diet Art, a certain high martial arts world records all the matching medicinal bath and medicinal diet preparation methods under the martial arts Grandmaster realm. Hearing the introduction of the system, Ji Chang'e was shocked, and then he was overjoyed. This martial arts medicinal bath and medicinal diet art is no less than giving him alchemy. Especially, this records all the medicinal bath and medicinal diet preparation methods under the martial arts Grandmaster realm. Chapter 91. Martial Arts Medicinal Bath, Medicinal Diet Technique. Ji Chang'e narrowed his eyes slightly, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth involuntarily. This time's sign in reward is of great use to himself and his martial slave Ji Yi and others. This martial arts medicinal bath and medicinal diet technique includes all the methods of making medicinal baths and medicinal diets below the martial arts Grandmaster. For him who lacks a panacea, this is like a long-awaited rain. With this medicinal bath and medicinal diet technique, he can use all kinds of rare medicinal materials in this world to make medicinal baths and medicinal diets to improve the strength of himself and others. If you can add some things that contain huge energy, such as the snake gall and inner elixir obtained when you killed the snowfield giant python before, you can maximize their role. This time's sign in reward is completely equivalent to rewarding a kind of alchemy. Compared to alchemy, medicinal baths and medicinal diets are obviously much more useful. After all, there is a possibility of failure in alchemy, and it can only be made by oneself, and the alchemy process is extremely cumbersome. Medicinal baths and medicinal diets are much simpler. Although there are not so many precious medicinal materials in this world due to the limitations of the world, there are still many uses. Ding! Host, do you want to receive the reward? Receive. Hearing the words of the system, Ji Chang'e answered immediately without any hesitation. Ding! Rewards are being distributed. As the system's voice fell, a torrent of information instantly poured into his mind. With his current cultivation and soul and spirit strength, he had completely digested this information in just a few breaths. Looking at the large number of medicinal baths and medicinal diets in his mind, the smile on Ji Chang'e's face unconsciously became more and more intense. It just so happened that I dismembered the snowfield giant python before. After the trip to Jingju Ancient City, I will use this as the core to have a medicinal bath and medicinal diet. Thinking like this, Ji Chang'e slowly gathered his mind, and time fell back on the plant material made of molten iron in front of him. In vain, he saw him put his fingers together to form a sword, and a flash of light blue light burst out from his fingertips, and then quickly slashed on the iron sheet outside the coffin in front of him. As soon as he pointed, the iron sheet outside the coffin, which was solidified by molten iron, was torn into countless pieces in an instant, and then fell to the ground. Without the cover of the iron sheet, the coffin inside was completely exposed to the air. This is a coffin made of unknown material, with strange patterns carved on it, revealing a hint of mystery. Especially in the middle of the coffin, there is a pattern like an eye. That eye seemed to have magic power. Ji Chang'e was stunned for a moment when he saw it. Interesting. Ji Chang'e smiled faintly, and then waved his right hand suddenly. ... A terrifying energy burst out, and it even flipped the sealed coffin lid out. Without the cover of the coffin lid, Ji Chang'e could see the situation inside the coffin clearly. In the coffin, a woman wearing red clothes with gold patterns was lying quietly. The woman wore gold ornaments on her head and a strange eye mask on her face, so her face could not be seen clearly. In the woman's hand, she also held a golden snake-shaped scepter, and a red gem was inlaid on the snake's head. Just like the ancient snake god's head, there was also an eye. In addition, there were some exquisitely crafted funerary objects on both sides of the coffin, which were worth a lot of money. After 3,000 years, this corpse is so perfectly preserved. It seems that even a small foreign country 3,000 years ago cannot be ignored. Ji Chang'e shook his head and sighed, then waved his hand and put all the artifacts in the coffin into the system space, even the golden snake-shaped scepter. However, at the moment when the scepter disappeared, a strong bloody aura suddenly burst out from the body of the female corpse. As soon as this bloody aura appeared, it instantly formed a blood mist, and then it surged from the coffin in an instant, filling the air of the entire 9th floor. Humble reptile, dare to trespass into my mausoleum and take my scepter. At this moment, a cold and resentful voice sounded from the coffin as the blood mist filled the air. Then, the female corpse that was originally lying in the coffin actually stood up straight. The two eyes under the mask flashed even more. It was shining red, staring at Ji Chang'e, as if he was a sinner of the ages. Resurrected, Ji Chang'e frowned, but soon shook his head. The female corpse was like a living person at this moment, and he could even hear her heartbeat. In his eyes, he knew that he could see that there was blood flowing in the blood vessels under the skin of the other party. This is obviously a living person, not a corpse that has been dead for 3,000 years. See, Ji Chang'e's eyes flashed with a gleam of light, and he flipped his right hand, and a golden snake-shaped scepter appeared in his hand. At this moment, the gem on the head of the golden snake-shaped scepter was actually flashing red light, which looked charming and gorgeous. Give me back my scepter. When the other party saw the golden snake-shaped scepter, he was furious and grabbed Ji Chang'e with one hand. Swish! Ji Chang'e's figure flashed and he retreated several meters in an instant. Reptile, you are looking for death. The woman was furious, her voice was extremely resentful. She waved her hand, and when her embroidered robe fluttered, countless black monster snakes flew out of her embroidered robe and flew towards him. These monster snakes were covered with black scales and red lines, and they were also slightly flashing with light, and there was a big flesh crown on their heads. Ji Chang'e recognized them at a glance. Aren't these black-scaled monster snakes the pure vision agama? Facing the attack of these pure vision agamas, Ji Chang'e's face remained unchanged. He used his right hand as a knife and suddenly chopped out a long knife condensed by light golden flames. The blade flashed, and the flames burned. The light golden flames swept across the entire 9th floor of the demon building, and countless pure vision agamas turned into charcoal in the flames. But what surprised Ji Chang'e was that the woman was actually fine, and it seemed that there was also a space in her embroidered robe, and endless pure vision agamas flew out. Seeing this scene, Ji Chang'e couldn't help but narrow his eyes and frown. He looked around, as if he wanted to find something. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. Kill! He suddenly closed his eyes, put his hands together, and suddenly slashed at the woman in front of him. This knife was extremely fast, and the light golden flames swept the entire space, as if it was going to directly collapse the 9-story demon building. In the dark, he seemed to hear a sound of breaking, and then the surroundings suddenly became silent. Ji Chang'e slowly opened his eyes, and when he saw the scene in front of him, a hint of, as expected, appeared in his eyes. At this moment, in the space of the 9th floor demon building, where was there any trace of the fight just now? There was not even a corpse of Jingjian Han, let alone a woman. The female corpse was still lying quietly in the coffin, as if nothing had happened just now. The only difference was that he was still holding the golden snake-shaped scepter he had just taken out. However, the gem on the snake head of the golden snake-shaped scepter had lost its original brilliant light and became extremely dim. At the same time, the eye mask on the face of the female corpse in the coffin was now covered with dense cracks, as if it would break at any time. Moreover, the female corpse was no longer as lifelike as before, like a living person, but was rapidly weathered and decayed at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into a mummy. The illusion of the realm. Ji Yu Cheng's eyes flashed, and he couldn't help but smile coldly. With his current strength, if it was just an illusion, he would definitely be able to detect it at the first time. But from the resurrection of the female corpse to her speaking, and then the countless pure visions of the Agama flying, everything seemed extremely real. No, it's not extremely real, it's simply real. This is the terrible thing about the illusion of the realm. It can project the illusion into reality, and you can even touch it. No one will doubt that all this is false. If it weren't for the last moment, he noticed something wrong. Even if the other party was magical, he shouldn't be able to drive the endless pure visions of the Agama to let him feel a loophole. I'm afraid he is standing and still fighting in the illusion of the realm. This person should be a ghost mother of a certain generation in the demon kingdom. The ability of the realm of illusion is indeed weird. Quote, looking at the female corpse in the coffin, which had completely become a mummy, Ji Yu Chengge couldn't help but smile faintly. The demon country ghost mother in front of him reminded him of another ghost mother. Nian Shanghan. Nian Shanghan was the first generation of demon country ghost mother, and was even known as the daughter of the evil god. As the first generation of ghost mother, Nian Shanghan's strength was unmatched. King Qian is good, and she could even open the passage of the imaginary space in the electric dust bead. After her death, she was also buried in the 9-story demon tower, and the burial place, although also in Kunlun, was hundreds of miles away from here, Longding Glacier. Boom. Coming back to his senses, Ji Yu Chengge waved his hand again, and the coffin lid that fell on the floor not far away instantly flew up, and then slammed on the implant. Since this ghost mother did not rise from the dead, after taking the human funeral objects, it was natural to cover her coffin lid again. Good. After everything was over, Ji Yu Chengge slowly walked down the stairs, ready to leave the 9-story demon tower. At the same time, outside the 9-story demon tower, thousands of mummies had now turned into countless pieces, scattered all over the cave. The originally densely packed, tens of thousands of Depu ghost insects were crushed to death. Fatty Wong and Hubba, with red faces, sat panting at the door of the first floor, gasping for breath. The ground around them, and even the stairs on each floor, were covered with broken pieces of corpses. It was obvious that the two men had really fought for their lives. Even their true energy was almost completely consumed. Buzz. Ji Yuyi leapt down from the top of the building, and fell to the ground with a few leverages. Clang. The long sword returned to the sheath. Ha ha ha. So good, so good. Today's battle, although they were all mummies of average strength, there were enough mummies and the Depu ghost bugs were dangerous enough, so I killed them happily. Ji Yu San sheathed his tang sword, put his hands on his waist, and smiled happily. Ji Yu Si, who was standing next to him, couldn't help but roll his eyes secretly and turned away. Just now, I didn't know who it was, but I was almost touched by a group of Depu ghost bugs. If it weren't for my second brother's help, I would have died long ago. Okay, since these things have been dealt with, shouldn't we go find Zhu Zheng as soon as possible? Ji Yu patted Ji Yu San's shoulder and said calmly. Not far away, Fatty Wong and Hubba stood up from the ground and exhaled heavily. Now that the crisis has been resolved, they finally relaxed. Old Hu, do you think I was handsome just now? There were so many mummies, and I killed all the way from the 7th floor to the 1st floor. Now that I am standing at this door, who can surpass me? Looking at the mummies all over the floor, Fatty Wong, who had relaxed, began to brag about himself again. Hu Ba, who was standing by, couldn't help but laugh helplessly. Although it was indeed the case, Fatty Wong was exaggerating a bit. Such a handsome scene, but he and the other two were watching it together, so how come you, Fatty, are the only one watching it? Pa. Just then, a sound of footsteps came from the demon building. Immediately afterwards, Ji Yu Chengge walked out of it. My lord, my lord. Seeing Ji Yu Chengge, the people who were just smiling and chatting suddenly became serious and said openly. Not bad. Looking at the scenes of the battles around him and the countless pieces of corpses, Ji Yu Chengge couldn't help but nod in praise. This place is full of evil spirits, it's a good place to practice. Rest here for one night, we'll leave tomorrow. Swish. As he spoke, Ji Yu Chengge waved his right hand, and a group of tents and other objects suddenly fell in front of everyone. Remember to clear a clean area, these fragments are scattered everywhere, and they don't disgust you. Glancing at everyone lightly, Ji Chang'e turned around and jumped, soaring hundreds of meters into the air and landing on the top of the 9-story demon tower. If so much evil energy is wasted, it would be a waste. It's just right to practice here for a night, which can improve my cultivation to some extent. Thinking of this, he sat down cross-legged and got up with the cloud-turning human swallowing technique. AAA. At what time, countless evil energy began to appear in the entire huge cave space, turning into black gas, sweeping towards Ji Chang'e. The people who were sent down saw this scene, and they all had an idea in their hearts. I'm going to practice. Ji Yi left a word, turned around and jumped onto the eaves of the demon building, and began to practice. I go practice too. Quote. Practice. Ji San, and Ji Si also left a word and flew onto the eaves of the demon building, leaving Hubba Yi and Fatty Wong alone. No, what do they mean? They go practice, and let you and me work. Fatty Wang's face was stiff. He looked at the people in the demon building, then looked at Hubba Yi, and immediately became a little angry. The battle just now lasted so long that I was almost exhausted to death, and now I have to work again. Is Fatty Wong born to be tired? Okay, who asked you and me to temporarily can't practice the great devouring evil secret art? Wait until you and I break through the 5th level of the acquired realm, and the master will pass on this secret art, isn't it? Hubba sighed, and finally had no choice but to pat Wang Pengzi's shoulder and said, get to work. Humph. Wang Pengzi snorted angrily, picked up the tent and other supplies on the ground and put them aside, and then began to clean up the dried corpse fragments on the ground with Hubba. The two did not plan to clean the entire cave, but just cleared a slightly larger space, and then started to set up tents and get some food. As for the dried corpse fragments around, will it make them feel sick? These things don't exist at all. Soon, a night passed. The next day, Ji Chang'e sat cross-legged on the eaves outside the 9th floor of the demon building, and a large amount of black evil spirits surrounded him. Countless evil spirits flowed into his body through his pores, first washing his flesh, and then refining it into true energy with the great devouring evil secret technique. Although he didn't break through the 7th level of the innate realm in one night, his cultivation level was still improved a lot. Buzz. He suddenly opened his eyes, his body shook, and the black evil spirits around him quickly dissipated. At the same time, Ji Yi and the other 4 also stopped practicing. Now the 4 of them have all entered the 9th level of the acquired realm, but they are still some distance away from the peak of the 9th level of the acquired realm, and it is still a long way to go to break through the innate realm. Ji San, Ji Si, the evil spirit here is strong, you two should stay here and practice well. After absorbing the evil spirit here, you two can go to the ancient city of Jingju. Ji Chang'e stood up and looked at Ji San and Ji Si below and ordered. Yes, master. Ji San and Ji Si did not refuse after hearing this. After all, the reason why Ji Chang'e brought them all this time was to let them practice in these places with strong evil spirits to improve their cultivation. Swish, swish, swish. The group of people fell from the sister building in a flash. Ji Yi patted Ji San and Ji Si on the shoulders and said, you two should practice well. We will leave marks for you along the way, and we also have satellite phones so that we can contact you when the time comes. Let's go. After giving the two a few instructions and leaving some supplies, Ji Chang'e took Ji Yi, Ji Hubba Yi and Wang Pengzi away from here. After Ji Chang'e and others left, Ji San and Ji Si flew up to the CFEJ demon building and began to practice. Although the concentration of evil spirits here cannot be compared with that of the tomb of King Lu, it is enough for the two to improve their cultivation to the peak of the 9th level of the acquired realm. If they are lucky enough, it is not impossible to break through the innate realm. On the other side, the people who left the cave began to return along the way they came. When they arrived at the underground river, Ji Chang'e stopped. Master, what's wrong? Seeing that Ji Chang'e had been staring at the underground river, Ji Yi asked in confusion. It's okay. Ji Chang'e shook his head. He thought that this time, he could still encounter the prehistoric creature Tyrannosaurus Rex in this underground river like in the original time and space. But this underground river is extremely calm at the moment, and there is no sign of any large creatures at all. Forget it. Ji Chang'e shook his head and flashed across the underground river. Seeing this, everyone jumped up and came to the other side of the underground river. It is unknown how deep this underground river is, and it is even more unknown where it leads to. If Ji Chang'e enters the water to search, he will definitely be able to find the Tyrannosaurus Rex. But there is no need for this. The most urgent task at the moment is to go to the Jingju ancient city and the tomb of Prince Gumo along the way to sign in. Since they did not encounter the Tyrannosaurus Rex when they returned, he naturally would not waste time to look for it. Everyone rushed all the way and soon came to the big crack in the canyon at that time. After returning to the snowfield, everyone began to go down to Kunlun Mountain. The trip to the 9-story demon tower on the glacier was over, and it was time to head directly to the border and into the desert. After descending the Kunlun Mountains, the group got into the car they had driven earlier. However, when they started the car, they found that the engine was broken because the weather was too cold and the temperature was too low. After all, it was just a vehicle of this era. If it were 20 years later, after the engine had been upgraded several times, this situation would be extremely rare. Without a car, the group had to rush to the nearest city. When they arrived at the town of Chong, the group did not leave directly, but had a good meal, and after a night's rest, they took the train to the border. Originally, the group planned to get another car and go directly to the border and drive like a desert. But just like the previous car, the cross-country running in this era is okay for mountain and desert periphery, but if you really go deep into the desert, the car will definitely break down. So, it is better to buy a few camels and ride them into the desert. Although it is a little slow, it is safer. At the same time, less than a day after Ji Chang'e boarded the train to Xinjiang, Shirley Yang and the archaeological team came out of the train station. The archaeological team did not go directly to Kunlun Snowfield, but contacted the locals. After learning that the archaeological team was coming, the locals showed great enthusiasm and even sent a class. The warriors protected everyone and set off towards the Snowfield Glacier. However, because the archaeological team was made up of the elderly and weak, and the weather was extremely cold, and everyone was carrying large and small bags, they walked very slowly after reaching the snowfield. After wasting a day, everyone did not find any traces of glacier cracks. As the sky darkened, everyone began to set up tents and prepare to rest for a night. But at night, they encountered a group of snow wolves. Although there were not many snow wolves, only more than 20, because they were on the snowy plateau, everyone did not dare to shoot and could only fight with cold weapons. In the end, although most of the snow wolves were slaughtered and the others were driven away, but the archaeological team also suffered casualties. Especially Satapang, whose aorta was bitten off on the spot and died of excessive blood loss. As people died in the team, everyone's mood became extremely low, but fortunately everyone still persisted. However, this time without Hubai and Wang Pengzi as the team leader, and because of Ji Chang'e's butterfly effect, the danger has increased exponentially. How many people in their archaeological team will be killed and wounded? And when they meet Ji San and Ji Si in the 9-story demon tower, what changes will happen? No one knows. Territory. The Taklamakan Desert is known as the largest desert in Daxia. It is also known as the Sea of Death in the whole world. The ancient city of Jingju is located in a certain area in the lower reaches of the Zaidu River in the Taklamakan Desert. But after the ancient city of Jingju was buried by yellow sand more than 2,000 years ago, no one could find it. Even if they found it, they could not get out alive. At this time, 5 camels were walking slowly in the desert, and 5 men were sitting on the humps of those camels. These people were none other than Ji Chang'e and the other 5. The scorching sun hung above the sky, and under the scorching sun, there was an endless desert, camels and pedestrians. From a distance, it was quite a different artistic conception. Since buying 5 camels, everyone has been in the desert for several hours, but they still haven't walked out of the outer area of the desert. Normally, with such a hot sun, coupled with being in the desert, ordinary people would have already been thirsty and extremely hot. However, everyone is not an ordinary person, and these hot temperatures still cannot affect them. Especially the martial arts that everyone practices is the 9 Yang Gong, which is originally a yang and fire type of martial arts according to the attributes. The heat resistance is naturally greatly improved. As for Ji Chang'e, With the 6th level of innate cultivation, no matter the desert or the snowfield, it will not have any effect on him. Master, is it really okay for us not to find a guide? Why do I feel like we will get lost? Fatty Wong sat on the hump and said helplessly. Don't worry, the master has told me the general location. With the 16-character Yin-Yang Feng Shui secret technique, it is not a problem to find the Jingju ancient city. It's just a matter of time. Hubba glanced at Fatty Wong with a smile and said with a smile. We will definitely encounter many dangers when we go to the desert this time. If we bring a guide with us and don't take good care of him, won't he die in the desert? At the front of the team, Ji Yu Chengge said calmly. That's true. After all, he is an ordinary person. Although we are not doing a good thing by robbing tombs, there is no need to drag ordinary people into the vortex. Hearing Ji Yu Chengge's words, Ji Yu Yi nodded and agreed. And don't forget, when we were in the town, a guide said that the windy season is coming soon. They don't want to enter the desert at this time. The desert in the windy season is much more dangerous than usual. Hearing that several people were educating him, Fatty Wong curled his lips and looked a little aggrieved. Fatty, I just said a few words casually, you don't have to start talking to me together, is it okay if I don't say anything? AAA. Seeing Fatty Wong showing this look, everyone couldn't help laughing. Even Ji Yu Chengge couldn't help but curl his lips slightly and smiled. In vain, he frowned and looked up at the sky in the distance. The originally clear sky was covered with beautiful clouds in the distance. And the clouds were moving quickly in the direction where they were. If you don't go out in the morning, you will see the evening glow. Such a strange phenomenon is not a good sign. My lord, the weather is going to change. I'm afraid it's going to be windy. At this time, Hu Bai behind him also found something wrong, and hurriedly drove the Lutuo to Ji Yu Chengge and said in a deep voice. It's not a good thing to have wind in the desert. Ji Yu Chengge sighed. He didn't expect that he would encounter a black sandstorm without following the archaeological team. Go. The desert wind is blowing, forming a sandstorm. Even if it can't hurt us, once we get separated, I'm afraid it will waste a lot of time again. As he said, Ji Yu Chengge made it run quickly to the distance. Seeing this, others also caught up. Sure enough, not long after everyone left, a strong wind blew in the distant sky. The wind swept the yellow sand, and the clouds were like blood. In just a short while, a sandstorm formed. The dark sandstorm, along with the direction of the strong wind, quickly collapsed in the direction where Ji Yu Chengge and the others were. After a while, they caught up with Ji Yu Chengge and the others. Being in the sandstorm, everyone's vision was blocked, and the speed of the camels was directly reduced. Fortunately, everyone was not an ordinary person. Although they were a little embarrassed, they were not in any danger. With Ji Yu Chengge as the arrow, everyone followed closely behind. I don't know how long it took, there seemed to be a building in front. Seeing this, everyone did not hesitate and hurriedly moved forward. When they came closer, everyone realized that this was actually an old earth house. This should have been the remains of an ancient city. With the passage of time, many buildings have collapsed and been buried under the yellow sand. Only this earth house has been preserved. But what is surprising is that there are 4 or 5 camels outside this earth house. For a moment, everyone looked at each other. They clearly felt that there seemed to be someone else in this mud house. Everyone looked at Ji Yu Chengge, who was standing aside, with obvious questioning in their eyes. Ji Yu Chengge was puzzled by this. This scene did not appear in the original time and space. Although he did not know what was going on, Ji Yu Chengge did not take it to heart. No matter what the origin of this group of people was, it would be fine if they did not attack them, otherwise they would just kill them. Ji Yu Chengge walked into the house with a calm face. Seeing this, the others did not bother to think about it and followed him. After entering the earth house, Ji Yu Chengge finally saw what was going on inside. There were 5 young men and women sitting around a fire in the earth house. When they found Ji Yu Chengge and others, they were obviously surprised, and they obviously did not expect to meet other people here. The 5 people looked at each other, their expressions were a little alert, but the leading man finally shook his head secretly, which calmed them down. Among the 5 people, except for the 2 women, the others were about 20 or 30 years old, wearing clothes similar to combat uniforms, with large and small bags beside them. As for the other two women, they looked only about 20 years old, or even younger. However, both women had beautiful faces. One of them had long hair and a high ponytail, and was wearing a leather jacket. She looked like a queen, but Ku Yujian was charming. The other woman had short hair, and she looked like a good girl next door, sitting by the fire and keeping warm silently. Ji Yu Chengge and his friends walked into the house, and did not speak to the gang, but also lit a fire. Ji Yu Chengge even deliberately took out a few bottles of water and a few large pieces of flesh from his backpack, which was actually the system space. From the texture of the meat, it looked like it had just been killed. However, this meat was the meat of the snowfield python that had been stored in the system space. When they saw the meat in Ji Yu Chengge's hand, Hubba's eyes lit up immediately. They knew that this was the meat of the snowfield python, which contained rich energy and was good for their cultivation. Fatty Wong and his brother Hubba took the meat and started roasting it without washing it. Fatty Wong even got some seasonings from somewhere and sprinkled them evenly on it. As the flesh of the snow python was roasted, a sweet fragrance instantly filled the entire earth house. The 3 men and 2 women not far away couldn't help but feel disgusted and greedy when they saw this. After all, the smell of meat was so good that they felt hungry just by smelling it. In addition, they accidentally lost all their supplies in order to avoid the sandstorm, which made the hungry and thirsty people even more greedy. The 5 people looked at each other and kept exchanging their eyes. Finally, the man in the lead stood up with a smile on his face and walked towards Ji Yu Chengge and others. Are you brothers also here to travel in the desert? Seeing this man, Ji Yu Chengge, Ji Yu Yi and Ji Yuer were not prepared to pay attention to him. However, Hu Bai and Fatty Wong looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. Ah, oh, haha, you guys are not here to play in the desert, are you? Hu Bai said with a smile. Yes, my name is Zhang Sen, and the guys over there are all hikers like me. What are your names? The man asked with a smile. Call me Lao Hu, just call him Fatty. Yes, my last name is Wong, just call me Fatty. Fatty Wong raised his head and grinned while roasting the meat in his hand. Who are these people? Zhang Sen nodded and looked at Ji Yu Chengge and the other two with a smile on his face. However, facing his smiling face, Ji Yu Chengge didn't even look at him, and closed his eyes to rest. As for Ji Yu Yi and Ji Yuer, they were also silently adding firewood to the fire, and they were also too lazy to pay attention to him. With their eyesight, they could tell at a glance that these people were not ordinary people, at least they had received some kind of training. This group of people had unknown origins, but they didn't care, and they didn't bother to care, but the premise was that it was best not to provoke them. Seeing the attitude of Ji Yu Chengge and the other two, Zhang Sen couldn't help but flash a haze in his eyes, and then laughed and said, sorry. It's me, Meng Lang. Old Hu, Fatty, there was a sandstorm outside just now, so our supplies were lost. If it is convenient for you, can you lend us some food and water? Food and water. Fatty Wong raised his head, looked at Zhang Sen seriously, and then looked at the other 4 people, and said with a serious expression, Brother Zhang Sen, it's not that I won't give you food and water, but now there are sandstorms outside, and we are in the desert. Food and water are such important supplies that they can save lives, so it's really hard to lend them out. No, how about we buy them with money? Zhang Sen said pleadingly. As he said that, he looked back at the 4 people behind him, and the 4 exchanged glances with each other. Then the short-haired woman stood up, looked at them pitifully with a pretty face and said, Brothers, please be kind and lend us some food and water, otherwise we are afraid that we will really starve to death in this desert. Brothers, this little girl has just come of age. Her name is Shen Chong. She is only in her 3rd year of high school this year. She is still a child. You can't let her starve like this. Shen Chong. Ji Yu Chengge slowly opened his eyes and looked at the other party with some surprise. Shen Chong. Ji Yu Chengge slowly opened his eyes and looked at the girl in front of him with a little surprise. The girl had short hair and looked like a girl next door. Perhaps because she was looked at by so many strangers, the girl was a little shy. A red cloud bloomed on her pretty face inadvertently, and she looked quite shy. Brothers, we are all friends when we go on a long journey. We also lost our supplies. We really have no other way. Please be kind and treat it as a good deed, how about it? Zhang Sen sighed helplessly, and took out a stack of money from his pocket and handed it over. Boss, you, see. Hu Ba turned his head and looked at Ji Yu Chengge on the side, with a questioning look in his eyes. This group of people are not ordinary people, and it is impossible for them to come to this desert for tourism. The most important thing is that he smelled a smell from the man named Zhang Sen in front of him. The smell of earth. This group of people are basically tomb robbers, and they are also here to rob tombs. Since he was a tomb robber, this girl who looked like a good neighbor could not be that simple. But the other party had already said so much, so he felt it was difficult to refuse. Interesting. Ji Yu Chengge's mouth curled slightly, revealing a faint smile. He did not expect to meet the Wang family here. Yes. Wang family. After hearing the name Shen Chong, he understood it immediately. 10 years later, during the implementation of the evil emperor's plan, a woman named Shen Chong also appeared. That woman was also a high school student, but the real Shen Chong seemed to have died. The Shen Chong who appeared later was actually a member of the Wang family. And she also had another name, Wang Xiaoyuan. And as far as he knew, Wang Xiaoyuan had sneaked into the Huo family and was called Huo Xiaoyuan. What she didn't understand was that in this timeline, the real Shen Chong should still be a little girl. Why did the woman in front of him, whose real name was Wang Xiaoyuan, use the name Shen Jing at this moment? Is it a coincidence, or was it planned in advance? Of course, in addition to this, what interested him most was that this Wang Xiaoyuan seemed to be not much younger than Zhang Yushan. The other party had appeared decades ago, and had participated in the Gutongjing plan. Ji Yu Chengge came back to his senses, looked up and down at Shen Chong in front of him, and then glanced at the other people not far away. Since the real name of the person in front of him was Wang Xiaoyuan, then the one named Zhang Sen next to him was Wang Zhao. What were the names of the other two men and one woman? This curiosity only flashed through his mind for a few times, and then he forgot it. He was just a little curious, as for the rest, he didn't care at all. No matter who the other party was, what did it have to do with him? As long as it didn't hinder him, the rest didn't matter. The fight between the other party and the Nine Gates and even the Zhang family had nothing to do with him. Give them some food and water. Meeting is fate. The desert is so big, it's not easy to walk. If you are not careful, you will be buried in the yellow sand, and no one will know if you die. Ji Yu Chengge looked calm, glanced at a few people, and said lightly. Zhang Sen's heart jumped when Ji Yu Chengge's eyes swept over him. After listening to what he said just now, Zhang Sen's heart was extremely alert for a while. There seemed to be some warning in these words. But the other party didn't know the identity of himself and others, and the other party also took food and water, so he shouldn't attack them, right? Hubba, who was standing aside, took out a few bottles of water and some dried meat and other food from his backpack and handed them to Zhang Sen and Shen Chong. These foods were carried by Fatty Wang. In Ji Yu Chengge's words, although he had the mustard seed zumi technique, he always had to bring something in his backpack to cover up his tracks. Therefore, Fatty Wang brought some delicious food and water, but he didn't bring any food such as compressed biscuits to resist hunger. Thank you, brothers. Take this money and treat it as what we bought. Zhang Sen handed the money to Hubai while picking up the food. Although they didn't get the meat they were grilling, they were still very happy when they saw the dried meat in their hands. Forget about the money, just take the food. Facing Zhang Sen's gesture of giving money, Hubai waved his hand. With his current wealth, he didn't care about this little money. Then thank you brothers. Zhang Sen hesitated for a moment, then took the money back, and said to them with a smile. Thank you, brothers. Shen Chong on the side also thanked them shyly, and then turned around and ran away. With this look, anyone who saw it would think that this was a good girl next door, which made people smile knowingly and feel distressed. But for Hubba Yi and others who had known that the other party was not simple, although they showed a smile on their faces, they did not take it seriously in their hearts, and were even extremely vigilant. A girl next door who seemed so well behaved and beautiful on the surface was actually a powerful and murderous farmer. This made Hubba Yi and Fatty Wang become particularly vigilant against beautiful women. They secretly warned themselves that the more beautiful a woman was, the more likely she would deceive people, and they must always be vigilant and must not fall into the trap. After all, although they had entered the martial arts practice and were strong men of the third level of the acquired realm, this did not mean that they were invincible. If they were not vigilant enough, they would be ambushed and fatally injured, and they would still die. Ji Chengge never thought that because of Shen Chong's incident today, Hubba Yi and Fatty Wong would never believe in beautiful women again. The more beautiful they were, the less they believed. Boss, who are those people? They are not ordinary grave robbers, right? They have obvious signs of training. They smell of earth and blood, and their hands are stained with a lot of blood. Hubba glanced at the 5 people not far away, and then whispered to Ji Chengge beside him. When his master heard that the girl next door was named Shen Chong, he was surprised. Others did not notice it, but he did. A group of brainwashed fools, don't worry about them. If they block our way, just kill them. Ji Chengge looked indifferent. Although he had just given them food and water, if they dared to block his way, they would all die. Hubba nodded silently, and then stopped talking. After roasting the meat in his hand, he gave each person a large piece. Ji Chengge took a bite, and it was indeed the flesh and blood of the snowfield giant python that had borne intelligence and powerful mutation. The meat is tender and tastes sweet. The meat also contains unknown energy. A piece of meat the size of a palm can fill the stomach of an ordinary person, and it will take a whole day to digest. However, several people are martial arts practitioners, and this kind of flesh and blood containing energy is what they need most. Even Hu Bai and Wang Pengzi ate 5 or 6 caddies of meat each, and stopped eating when they couldn't eat any more. As for Ji Yi and Ji Yu, they were fine. After all, they were strong men of the 9th level of the acquired realm. After eating 5 or 6 caddies of meat and feeling a little full, they stopped eating. Hu Bai and Wang Pengzi sat cross-legged, closed their eyes and carefully refined the energy in the flesh and blood they had just eaten. Ji Yi and Ji Yu half leaned against the wall, practicing the skills, and finished refining it in a short while. Ji Chengge, on the other hand, ate the barbecue slowly, one bite at a time. The energy in these meats needs to be refined by others, but he doesn't need it at all. As soon as the meat entered his stomach, the energy automatically merged into his body without any reaction. After he had eaten all the meat, he closed his eyes and rested. At this time, the strong wind outside stirred the yellow sand to fly all over the sky, and the low whimpering sound, like the howling of ghosts and wolves, whispered in everyone's ears. After such a big sandstorm, I don't know how many animals will be buried in the yellow sand. On the other side, a group of 5 people were eating and discussing something. While talking, they carefully glanced at Ji Chengge and others not far away from time to time. Captain, those people are probably not ordinary people. Do you think they will affect our actions? A young man in his 20s with a buzz cut glanced at those people with a sinister look and whispered. Lu Shu, don't forget that the dried meat and water you are eating now are all given by others. Hearing what this person said, Shen Chong glared at the young man named Lu Shu and said with some dissatisfaction. Of course, this person's real name is Wang Shu, but when he is on a mission outside, he will use other names unless necessary. So what? Besides, our supplies have been lost now, and it is unrealistic to pick them up again. If we kill that group of people and take their supplies for ourselves, wouldn't it be a good thing? Being stared at by Shen Chong, Lu Shu was not embarrassed at all, but looked vicious and vicious. I think Lu Shu's words may be suspected of crossing the river and destroying the bridge, but it is a good idea. What do you think? A man with a burly figure, dark skin and about 30 years old nodded and agreed. I agree too. Without supplies, we can't even get out of the desert next, let alone complete the mission. Then, the last young man with side bangs, dyed yellow hair and earrings spoke coolly. The former of these 2 people is called Lao He and the latter is called Zhao Li. I don't agree. After eating someone's food, you want to kill someone now. What kind of logic is this? Our Wang family is pursuing the traces and beliefs of our ancestors. Although we are walking in the dark and fighting with the 9 gates and the Zhang family, we are not bloodthirsty puppets who only know how to kill people. Don't kill people at every turn. Can you use your brain? Shen Chong looked at Lu Shu and the other 2 with great disgust. She didn't know why she would carry out the mission with these idiots. Su Nan, what do you say? Zhang Sen turned his head and looked at the woman in leather clothes and high ponytail who had been silent all the time. Me. Su Nan shook his head. I don't care, I just listen to you. You are the captain, it doesn't matter whether you kill him or not, but the other party is not an ordinary person. There may be certain risks if you act rashly. Zhang Sen frowned, turned his head and looked at Ji Yu Changge and others who closed their eyes to rest, and finally said in a deep voice. We are following the orders of our family this time to find the ancient city of Jingju. The calculation department calculated that there is something in the ancient city of Jingju that can control all snakes. It is rumored that the queen of Jingju has boundless demon pupils, which can make others disappear from reality with just one glance, and has the ability to transform and drive snakes. If we can master this ability, the strength of my Wang family will definitely increase dramatically. Captain, this ancient city of Jingju is in the vast desert and has been buried by yellow sand for more than 2,000 years. How can we find it? The calculation department has not calculated any useful results. They said it was in the generation of Zaidu River, but we don't know where Zaidu River is. Hearing what Zhang Sen said, Lao He drank a sip of water in annoyance. Look slowly, you have to find it even if you can't find it. Zhang Sen said in a serious voice. It is a big matter for the family, no matter what difficulties there are, it must be completed. Captain, the boundless demon pupil sounds mysterious, but how can we get it? Even if we find the ancient city of Jingju, we may not be able to get this ability, right? Su Nan frowned and said. It doesn't matter. Zhang Sen shook his head. Although we are going to the ancient city of Jingju, our ultimate goal is the electric dust bead. Electric dust bead. Everyone was a little surprised when they heard it. Electric dust bead is one of the 3 great magic beads, also known as Phoenix Gallbladder. But what does the search for the electric dust bead have to do with the Jingju ancient city? Although they are all members of the Wang family, Zhang Sen is the highest in terms of status, so he gets the most information. According to the calculations of the calculation department and the information collected over the years, the electric dust bead is actually the eye of the snake god. The reason why the queen of Jingju has the boundless demon pupil seems to be inseparable from the dust bead. As long as the electric dust bead is found, the family will definitely be able to solve the problem of the boundless demon pupil. At this point, Zhang Sen glanced at several people, and then continued, so our mission on this trip is extremely important, and there must be no mistakes. The group of people next to us are not ordinary people. If we act rashly against them like this, once there is a mistake, we will be exposed. If we are discovered by the 9 gates and the Zhang family, how can the family's mission be completed? So I warn you, no one is allowed to act without my order. After the storm in Fengsha City stops, we will leave here immediately. As for the problem of food and water, don't worry. The family has specially arranged a team of foreigners to wait for us in front. While speaking, Zhang Sen looked at Lu Shu and the other 2 with respect. Obviously, the last few words he said were said to the 3 of them. Or in other words, he was warning them. Since you said so, Captain, I will not affect the progress of the mission because of this matter. Being stared at by Zhang Sen, Lu Shu shrugged his shoulders and said indifferently. Captain, you mean us? Yes, Captain, don't worry, we will leave when the storm in the Sand City stops. Quote. Lao He and Zhao Li also nodded and gave up the idea of attacking Ji Yu Changge and others. Seeing this, Zhang Sen nodded and fell silent again. However, Lu Shu, who was beside him, had a subtle murderous look in his originally sinister eyes, and an invisible spiritual wave flashed around him. But at this time, they didn't know that although they spoke in a low voice, ordinary people couldn't hear it at all if they didn't get close, but Ji Yu Changge and others who were not far away from them heard it clearly. But whether it was Ji Yu Yi, Ji Yu or Haba Yi and Wang Pangzi, none of them made any moves. The first 2 were indeed resting, while Hu Peng and the other 2 were still refining the energy contained in the meat they had just eaten, and they were too lazy to pay attention to it. Ji Yu Changge, on the other hand, raised his mouth slightly, revealing a curve. It's interesting. I didn't expect that the Wang family also set their sights on the Jingju ancient city, and even wanted to get the electric dust pearl to obtain the ability of the boundless demon eye. Single quote. It's a pity that the electric dust beads are not in the Jingju ancient city. Even if you get the dust beads, it may not be a good thing. Ji Yu Changge shook his head secretly. This group of Wang family members are really a group of people who have been brainwashed into fools. Now the destination of both parties is the same, but the other party does not know where the Jingju ancient city is, so they can only search aimlessly. Ji Yu Chengge and his friends know the general route, and with Hubba's ability of the 16-character Yin-Yang Feng Shui secret technique, they can find it. Originally, when he heard that the other party wanted to attack him and others, he was ready to kill them all at that time. But he didn't expect that Shen Chong and Zhang Sen actually stopped the other people, which made Ji Yu Chengge really helpless. I hope you can always make the right choice, otherwise the vast yellow sand will still be your grave on the trip to the Jingju ancient city. Ji Yu Chengge muttered to himself, and then couldn't help opening his eyes, looking at Lu Shu sitting next to Zhang Sen, and couldn't help flashing a hint of surprise in his eyes. Just now, he clearly felt the spiritual fluctuations contained in the person. This spiritual fluctuation seemed to be in the person's body, or more precisely, in his brain. But how could an ordinary person's spiritual fluctuations splash outside? And what really surprised Ji Yu Chengge was that the spiritual fluctuations in Lu Shu's body were full of resentment and death, as if they did not belong to humans at all. Interesting. Maybe something more unexpected will happen. Ji Yu Chengge smiled faintly, and then stopped thinking about it and rested again. At the same time, in the large crack of the glacier canyon, Shirley Yang and the archaeological team have found the canyon crack and have reached the bottom of the big crack, heading towards the direction of the cave. Because of the snow wolf attack last night, the archaeological team member Sa Depeng died and several other soldiers were injured. Therefore, not everyone followed. Only Shirley Yang, Professor Chen, Hao Eguo, Chu Jian, Yi Yixin and 2 soldiers followed. Then, just like in the original time and space, Shirley Yang got a pistol from the corpse. Everyone saw some ghost cave texts on the wall, and then everyone continued to move forward, crossing the underground river and reaching the cave. It's a miracle of nature, it's really a miracle of nature. I didn't expect that there would be such a large underground cave so deep underground. Looking at the huge cave in front of him, Professor Chen couldn't help but tremble with shock and excitement. The other people beside him were also very excited. Especially when they saw the 9-story demon building not far away, they were even more excited. Teacher, that's the 9-story demon building. It's a product of the demon country. I have never found a 9-story demon building that is so well preserved and so big in Daxia. Hao Eguo supported Professor Chen, staring at the 9-story demon building with extremely hot eyes, and his voice trembled when he spoke. Yes, this is a major discovery in the archaeological community, and it will definitely make a sensation at home and abroad. Quote. Professor Chen was excited and immediately asked everyone to move forward, wanting to observe the 9-story demon building up close. Uncle Chen, something seems to be wrong. Look at the cave floor. Why are there so many fragments? Suddenly, Shirley Yang's tone was a little solemn. She walked forward quickly, wearing gloves, picked up a fragment from the ground, and looked at it carefully for a while. But the more she looked, the uglier her face became, just because this fragment turned out to be part of human tissue. She quickly looked at the other fragments on the ground, and saw that those fragments seemed to be part of the human body, and she even saw a lot of broken hands and feet, as well as heads. Although these things have been decayed and weathered, she can still recognize them. Uncle Chen, these fragments are all parts of the mummies, but for some reason these mummies have become fragments. With so many fragments, if they were complete, the number of mummies would be at least hundreds. What? Mummified fragments? Hearing what Shirley Yang said, Professor Chen hurried forward and looked at the fragments carefully. After seeing that they were indeed mummified fragments, Professor Chen said with great sorrow, "What a sin. It's really a sin. These are all mummies near the 9-story demon tower. Maybe they are the people of the demon kingdom back then. If it was a complete mummified corpse, maybe we could get a lot of information about the demon kingdom from it, but now it has been broken into so many fragments. What is going on?" Quote, from the cut of the fragments, it seems to be cut by some sharp weapon. It should be human. At this time, a soldier looked carefully and said with a very solemn expression. Human. When everyone heard this, they were shocked. Could it be that someone had been here before we came? Shirley Yang asked hurriedly. It should be. This place has obviously been cleaned up by someone. There are mummies all around the cave, but there is an area in front that has been cleaned up, and there are signs that someone has been here. The soldier nodded and said in a deep voice. At this moment, the two soldiers subconsciously held the guns in their hands and observed the surroundings with extremely vigilant expressions. Someone actually came here one step ahead of us, and destroyed all these mummies. It's really hateful. Hao Eguo clenched his fists and said angrily. And at this time, Shirley Yang was undoubtedly the most anxious. She came here just to find the notebook. If someone showed up here earlier, would they take her notebook away? Thinking of this, Shirley Yang hurriedly looked around. KK. In vain, at this moment, two sounds of breaking through the air came from afar. Before everyone could react, they saw two figures appearing not far in front of them. Stop, who are you? Seeing the two people coming suddenly, the two soldiers quickly raised their guns and shouted with vigilance. Professor Chen, you step back, these two people are not simple. At this time, Ji Yu-san and Ji Yu-si also looked at Shirley Yang and others in surprise. Since Ji Yu-chenge and others left, the two have been practicing here. Until just now, they completely devoured and refined all the Yinshiqi, and raised their cultivation to the peak of the 9th level of the acquired realm. But before they could be happy, they realized that someone had come, and there was more than one person. Before asking us, shouldn't you tell us who you are? Ji Yu-san didn't show any fear when he was pointed at with a gun. Instead, he showed a playful smile and teased everyone. Are you human or ghost? Chu Jian looked at Ji Yu-san and Ji Yu-si who appeared in front of him. His expression was a little frightened, and his voice couldn't help but tremble. In this cave that was unknown how deep underground, there were 9-story demon towers and the mummy fragments on the ground. Suddenly, there were two more people. How could he not be afraid? Chu Jian, what are you talking about? As an archaeologist, you have to believe in materialism. There are no ghosts and gods in the world. These two are obviously human. Hao Eguo's face was livid, staring at Ji Yu and scolding. Yes, I understand, Mr. Hao. Chu Jian's face flushed. After all, as an archaeologist, he really shouldn't say these words. Two young people, we are from the archaeological team. Why are you here? And why are there these mummies on the ground? Can you help me, an old man, to solve my puzzle? At this time, Professor Chen stepped forward, looked at Ji Yu-san and the others with a kind face, and asked. As he said that, he waved to the two soldiers next to him and smiled. Don't be so nervous, put away your guns, why are you so serious? From the archaeological team. Ji Yu-san raised his eyebrows and looked at the two soldiers who had put away their guns, and a smile appeared on his face. What are you doing here as an archaeological team? This is not an ancient tomb. Oh, I almost forgot that this 9-story demon building is also a kind of tomb. So, are you here to explore the tomb of the demon kingdom? Don't talk nonsense here. Who are you? Did you destroy these mummies? Do you know that these are precious treasures? Seeing Ji Yu-san, who was smiling and a little out of tune, Hao Eguo, who was old-fashioned by nature, suddenly became serious and asked in a stern voice. As soon as these words came out, the smile on Ji Yu-san's face froze and his expression suddenly turned cold. Ji Yu-si, who was standing next to him, couldn't help but narrow his eyes and stared at Hao Eguo. What do you want to do? Being stared at by the two people like this, Hao Eguo felt his hair stand on end, panicked, and his heart beat slower. He said with a fearful tone. Who are we? It doesn't seem to have much to do with you, right? These mummies are made by us, so what if we didn't? Ji Yu-san sneered, glanced at everyone, and then said disdainfully, archaeological team. Ha. Old third, why waste time talking to them? We have wasted these days and it's time to leave. At this time, Ji Yu-si, who was standing next to him, suddenly spoke. That's right, it's time to leave. Ji Yu-san nodded, then retracted his gaze, and the two of them were about to leave here. He didn't have time to talk nonsense with this group of archaeological team members. You can't leave. You destroyed the mummies. I seriously suspect that you are tomb robbers. You want to steal the tombs of the demon kingdom, and you destroyed so many mummies. However, seeing Ji Yu-san and the other two were about to leave, Hao Eguo shouted loudly, then looked at the two soldiers beside him and said, what are you waiting for? Catch them quickly. Quote. The two soldiers hesitated. If they said that others were tomb robbers, they should at least provide evidence. The two men didn't have anything in their hands, just a tang sword each. It seems that the craftsmanship is obvious. It is obviously cast in modern times, and it doesn't look like an antique. How can they arrest people without any evidence? And they are soldiers, they are only responsible for protecting the archaeological team, but they have no right to arrest people. Wait a minute. At this time, Shirley Yang, who had been silent beside them, suddenly spoke, and then came to the two and said, "Gentlemen, I wonder if you know Tianxing Feng Shui." Tianxing Feng Shui. Hearing Shirley Yang's question, Ji Yu-san and Ji Yu-si couldn't help but look at each other, with a hint of surprise in their eyes. "Why are you asking this?" Shirley Yang smiled slightly. "If you two know Tianxing Feng Shui, I wonder if I can hire you two as the leader of our archaeological team." In fact, for Shirley Yang, the identities of Ji Yu-san and Ji Yu-si are not important. The destruction of those mummies and the theft of the 9-story demon tower of the demonic kingdom mausoleum have nothing to do with her. She just wants to find the Jingju ancient city as soon as possible to remove the curse on her. If Ji Yu-san and Ji Yu-si are really tomb robbers, that's good, and if they know Tianxing Feng Shui, it's even better. In the desert, once you lose, if he didn't know the direction, he would just wait for death. Even if he found the notes left by his father and had some maps for reference, it would be extremely difficult to find the Jingju ancient city. But once there is someone who knows the Tianxing Feng Shui technique to lead them, plus the notebook, the chance of finding the Jingju ancient city will be greatly increased. Be the leader of your archaeological team. Ji Yu-san was slightly stunned, and then sneered, "Forget about the leader, we are not interested in this, but I am very curious, where are you going?" Tang Ran must know the Tianxing Feng Shui technique. "Sir, we plan to find the Jingju ancient city. If you know the Tianxing Feng Shui technique, I can give you a satisfactory reward." Shirley Yang asked with anticipation. Jingju ancient city. The two of them couldn't help showing a hint of surprise in their eyes when they heard this. "Good guy, the archaeological team actually wants to go to the Jingju ancient city." No. It seems that Hubayi said before that Da Jinya recommended Hubayi to join the archaeological team, and it seems that they are also going to the Jingju ancient city. Could it be the archaeological team in front of them? Ji Yu-san and Ji Yu-si looked at each other and got the answer from each other's eyes. "Okay, we don't know Tianxing Feng Shui, so you should ask someone else to be the team leader. Xiao-si, let's go." Ji Yu-san waved his hand and called Ji Yu-si, and was too lazy to chat with him. He stepped on the ground and instantly jumped dozens of meters away. Seeing this, Ji Yu-si on the side also rushed over. The speed of the two people was so fast that it was simply shocking. In a few leaps and moves, they disappeared from everyone's sight. Such an amazing scene made Shirley Yang and the archaeological team members stunned, horrified, and incredible. A leap across a distance of dozens of meters in an instant. Is this still a human? Is this the speed that a human can have? Shirley Yang is also well informed, and she knows that when her grandfather was young, he was the leader in moving mountains and his personal skills were extremely powerful. When he was young, he used the Kuixing kick to remove the spine of a household king. It is said that he even killed a 6-winged centipede in Pingshan. Such skills are already considered the top strong man in the world. But even so, my grandfather would never be able to do this, leaping and moving across dozens of meters, right? Before he died, my grandfather said that Daxia was full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers, and there were many masters. I didn't expect to meet two here. Old teacher, was I dazzled just now? How could they cross a distance of dozens of meters in the blink of an eye? This is not scientific. How Eguo looked shocked and puzzled, and felt that something was wrong with his head. Strange people. Professor Chen had a complicated expression and sighed softly. He was a respected old professor in the archaeological community. Naturally, he knew that there were many unusual things in the world, and he also knew that some people were so powerful that they could be called monsters. But he had never heard of someone who could possess such a terrifying ability. The two soldiers on the side were also shocked at this moment. After all, this scene was indeed too shocking, and even the army had never heard of such an inhuman existence. At the same time, the Taklamakan desert. As the night passed, the strong wind outside gradually subsided. The original terrifying sandstorm began to disappear silently. Ji Chang'e slowly opened his eyes and woke up from meditation. At this time, in the Earth House, except for their group, Zhang Sen, Shen Chong and others had already left. "My lord, it's time for us to continue our journey." Quote. Beside him, Hu Bai was packing his backpack. When he saw Ji Chang'e wake up, he passed a portion of food and a bottle of water to him and said, "Well, let's go." Ji Chang'e stood up slowly, took the food and water, and walked out of the adobe house. The weather in the desert is unpredictable. Yesterday, there were still howling winds and dust everywhere, but now the sun is high and scorching. Even the yellow sand on the ground has become extremely hot. Master, the group of people left here before dawn, just after the sandstorm stopped in the Sand City, but I see that the direction in which this group of people left seems to be the direction of the ancient city of Xie. We may have to collide with them. Outside the adobe house, seeing Ji Chang'e coming out, Ji Yi held a tang sword in his arms and stood in front of a camel and said, "Master, yesterday the group of people said that they also wanted to go to the ancient city of Jingju, and they also wanted to find some dust beads. This is a conflict with us, and this group of Wang family members are not good people at first glance. Why not just kill them?" Quote. At this time, Fatty Wang came over and asked in confusion. In his opinion, since the destination is the same and the other party is not a good person, they will be defeated sooner or later. Anyway, they will die sooner or later, so it is better to kill them yesterday. No need. Ji Chang'e shook his head and said expressionlessly, "If the strength between the two sides is not much different, then it is indeed necessary to seize the initiative and kill them as soon as possible. But with your strength, killing them is like slaughtering pigs and dogs. If a conflict really occurs, just kill them at will. There is no need to be afraid of this matter." Quote. Hearing this, Fatty Wang could only nod his head. He was indeed afraid of trouble at that time, so it was better to kill him as soon as possible. But think about it, the gap between the two sides is too big, and there is no way to conflict. With their strength, there is no need to be afraid. Okay, it's time to change. Ji Chang'e turned over and jumped onto the back of a camel, looking at the endless rolling yellow sand in the distance, and then looking at the mud house next to it. In his memory, there should be desert marching ants here, but he didn't expect that they didn't encounter them. Or the author said that the desert army ants are mobile and have not arrived here yet. They can only wait for the archaeological team to arrive. Will the group appear here? Although he didn't know what happened, Ji Chang'e didn't take it seriously. It saved some time if he didn't encounter them. The group continued their journey and rode camels towards the yellow sand in the distance. The direction they were heading was the ancient city of Xie. There was also a tomb of Prince Guma waiting for them, or perhaps there were other surprises. In the endless yellow sand, a group of 5 people rode camels and walked in the desert under the scorching sun. The sun was scorching, the temperature in the air reached at least 40 to 50 degrees, and the surface temperature was close to 70 degrees. However, the 5 people did not feel the heat at all, but sat on the camels leisurely and walked forward. Even several people held a bottle of ice beer in their hands and drank from time to time. Sometimes, when they were chatting and laughing, they would toast each other from a distance. And these 5 people who were so leisurely were none other than Ji Chang'e and others. It has been 4 or 5 days since the storm in the Sand City, and these days they have been rushing on the road. It happened that there were several boxes of ice beer in the system space during the boring and tedious journey. This thing was specially bought by Fatty Wang when he bought supplies after knowing that Ji Chang'e had the mustard seed zumi technique. In the hot desert, riding a camel and drinking ice beer, what kind of experience is that? Others may not know, but now Ji Chang'e and others have experienced it. Just 2 words, comfortable. I say, Fatty, you bought a good deal on the ice beer. We should bring some back next time we come to the desert. Ji Yi rode the camel leisurely, holding a bottle of ice beer in his left hand and took a big sip. A feeling of coolness and excitement instantly came to my heart. Hee, that's right, I told you that I have foresight. Quote. Fatty Wang proudly raised his neck, took a big sip of beer, and said with a smile. At the front of the team, Ji Chang'e couldn't help shaking his head and laughing when listening to the words of the 2 people behind him, and then he also took a sip of cold beer. Don't say it. This feeling is really refreshing and comfortable. Hey, master, there is an oasis ahead. Suddenly, Hubba pointed to the front and exclaimed. When everyone heard this, they also looked up and looked into the distance. In the distance, there was an oasis between the yellow sand and the undulating sand dunes. Although the oasis was not particularly large, it was like a pearl in the desert, located here, giving people a huge impact. Perhaps there was no oasis for Yu Chang'e and others, but for those who lost their belongings in the desert, it was a big oasis. For people on the verge of despair, this oasis is their hope of survival. Let's go. The ancient city of Xie is ahead. Yu Chang'e's eyes lit up, and he drove the camel quickly towards the oasis. The ancient city of Xie is located on this oasis. At the same time, this is also the most important supply site in the desert. When everyone arrived at the ancient city of Xie, looking at the surrounding vegetation and the ruins of the ancient city, everyone couldn't help but feel happy. After all, they have been in the desert for several days, and there is nothing but sand dunes. It's natural to be happy to see something else suddenly. Set up a few tents, and then make some fresh food to eat. We will rest in this ancient city of Xie for a day or two, just in time to wait for Xiaoxi and the others. My lord, Xiaoxi and the others contacted me yesterday and the day before yesterday, saying that they have entered the desert, and they also met the archaeological team of the Inviter Hu at the Kunlun Glacier. Ji Yuyi said with a smile. The Kunlun Glacier and the Taklamakan Desert, this group of archaeological teams are probably looking for death. Fatty Wong sneered, full of contempt for the archaeological team. They have already seen the dangers of the Kunlun Glacier. Even he and Lao Hu are no match for the giant snow python. Even if the archaeological team is lucky and there is no giant snow python, what about other creatures on the snow? Do you really think there are no dangerous creatures in the snowy plains? As for the desert, it is even more dangerous. There are sandstorms at any time, and you will get separated if you are not careful. There are also various poisonous things such as snakes, scorpions, lizards, etc. in the desert. They don't know how many they have encountered along the way. But the archaeological team actually broke into the snow and desert in a short period of time. Isn't this looking for death? Okay, archaeological work, according to their words, for the sake of archaeological cause, not afraid of sacrifice, this spirit is still worth promoting. You, hurry up and set up the tent for me, don't take the opportunity to be lazy. Hu Ba slapped Wang Pengzi on the head, instantly breaking his disdainful expression. Hee, it's boring to be discovered by you. Wang Pengzi grinned and said nothing more. After the tent was set up, several people began to prepare some fresh food. Yu Chang'e walked around in the ruins of the ancient city to check. Master, look, there is actually a well here, and there is water in it. Just then, Ji Yuyi's voice came from not far away. In front of him, there was indeed a round well. It should be here. Yu Chang'e narrowed his eyes slightly. There was only one well in the entire ancient city ruins, and the tomb of Prince Gumo was under the well. Thinking of this, Yu Chang'e couldn't help but walk towards the well. Master, I just went around the entire ancient city and found traces that someone should have been here in the past few days, and there were quite a few people. Quote. Coming to the well, looking at the well in front of him, after hearing what Ji Yuyi said, Yu Chang'e didn't take it seriously, just nodded and said, it should be the Wang family from before, the direction they were heading at that time, wasn't it this Xie ancient city? Quote. Master, it seems, not just them. Yu Chang'e raised his eyebrows, turned his head to look at Ji Yuyi, and asked in surprise, not just them. I found traces of at least a dozen people, and they seemed to have a conflict and fought. Quote. More than a dozen people. And there was a fight. Yu Chang'e couldn't help laughing when he heard it. Let's go, take me over to see, are there any bodies left? Yes, and one of them is one of the 6 Wang family members. Ji Yuyi nodded and replied. Interesting, it seems that something unexpected has indeed happened. Yu Chang'e couldn't help showing an interested smile on his face. He was very curious about what happened to make the Wang family lose face. Not long after the two of them walked, Yu took him to a broken building. There were indeed a lot of traces of fighting here, and from the different footprints, there were indeed more than a dozen people. There were even bloodstains under the yellow sand, but they were specially handled. Ji Yi took Ji Chang'e to a sandpit, where there were actually 5 bodies. One of the 5 bodies was indeed one of the Wang family members in Zhang Sen's group that I saw a few days ago. It seems that his name is Zhao Li. As for the other 4 bodies, 3 were foreigners, and 1 was actually a woman. The 5 men had many wounds on their bodies, but the most fatal wounds were their necks cut open and their hearts pierced, which showed that they had indeed fought fiercely before they died. Let's go, there's nothing to see. Ji Chang'e shook his head and turned back to the camp. After everyone had eaten and drunk enough, the sky gradually darkened and the temperature in the air began to drop. In front of the camp, looking at the stars that had gradually emerged in the sky, Ji Chang'e couldn't help but stand up slowly. Everyone, have you eaten and drunk enough? Then it's time to do some post-meal exercise. When this was said, everyone was stunned at first, and then they stood up quickly, each with a smile on their face. My lord, is there a tomb here? Fatty Wang's eyes were bright, and his expression was extremely expectant. Well, there is indeed a tomb, in that well. Ji Chang'e nodded, and then took the lead to walk towards the well. Haha, there really is a tomb. Fatty has been so anxious these days. I didn't expect there is a tomb here. When he heard that there really was an ancient tomb, Fatty Wang was immediately excited. He slapped Hu Bai on the arm and said unhappily, I say, Lao Hu, don't you know the 16-character yin-yang feng shui secret technique? How come you didn't find that there is an ancient tomb here? You can't do it either. As he said that, Fatty Wang hurriedly trotted towards the well. Hey, you are a dog, right? Hu Bai glared at him unhappily, then looked up at the stars in the night sky, and then looked at the yellow sand around. As he looked, he hurriedly took out the compass from his bag, and his eyes became brighter the more he looked. Ju Men star, Zuo Fu star, Yu Bai star, 3 stars shining. It is indeed a place covered by auspicious stars, and there is really a big tomb. Okay, stop looking. Can the master still deceive you? Ji Yuer patted his shoulder, shook his head and smiled. That's right. Hubba nodded slightly, put away the compass, and the 2 of them walked towards the direction of the well. After a while, everyone gathered by the well. Master, let's go down to the tomb quickly. I can't wait any longer. Looking at the well in front of him, Fatty Wang rubbed his hands and smiled. Go down and take a look first. This tomb is set in the well. I think something is specially used to separate the well and the ancient tomb below. Otherwise, it is impossible for others to find out that it has not been confined for so many years. Okay, master, you just wait for good news from me, Fatty. Fatty Wang smiled and nodded, then jumped directly into the well. Although he looks fat, he is now very fast and extremely flexible. Like a big fat fish in the water, he soon came to the bottom of the well. Looking at the bottom of the well, there was a layer of leather made of a special unknown material. Fatty Wang carefully tore it apart and found that there were 10 thick cloth doors underneath. There was also a protruding stone on the stone door. Seeing this, Fatty Wang turned the stone. TYY. In an instant, the water in the well continued to vibrate, and then disappeared quickly without knowing it, leaving only an empty well. Seeing this, Fatty Wang was a little stunned, and Ji Chang'e and others above were also a little surprised. Master, what's going on? Why did the water disappear? Fatty Wang shouted loudly above. Fatty, did you touch any mechanism? Hubba frowned and said. I just found a stone on the stone door below. It should be a mechanism, so I tried to move it. That's right, it must have touched the mechanism, causing the well water to disappear temporarily. It seems that the water in this well itself is also an effective way to protect the tomb. Okay, stop wasting time, and open the stone door quickly. After hearing this, Fatty Wang didn't hesitate. Although the stone door was heavy, it was not a problem for him to push it with his current strength. As he said this, Fatty Wang exerted force with both arms, and the surging qi merged into his arms. A sound came from the stone door, and the heavy stone door was immediately pushed open, revealing a passage. My lord, this is indeed a tomb passage. Ji Chang'e's mouth curled slightly. Get ready to go to the tomb. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.